Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for spending part of your afternoon with us. We'll try to make it as enjoyable as possible and probably not as short as possible, but I see Pastor Jim is here, ready to lead us in the invocation. Thank you for being here. And with that, and then I will lead the pledge after the invocation. Okay.
Lord Jesus, we welcome you to this meeting. We welcome you, Holy Spirit. Father, you and I both know this city is a special city. There's many men of God that know what's going to happen in the city of Prescott. This is the root, as we know, the original territorial capital of Arizona, and it's going to begin at the root. And Lord, I ask that you open up the heavens and send your fullness, your presence of heaven from the third heaven into this city upon all the councilmen, on everyone here, that you protect the police department, the fire department, protect the councilmen, protect everyone here, Lord. And Lord, that there will be a special time that we will have this year, because it's been said by many people of God about what's going to happen this year for the United States of America, and it's going to be good. It's going to be real good. And the city of Prescott is going to be leading it, because it's going to be about intercessory prayer and the love of Jesus Christ. Lord, I ask that you just touch every precious person in here and love them and protect them and bring them into the kingdom. And Lord, I just thank you that this is a special time. Give us all wisdom, understanding, discernment in this special year, especially for the next 6 months. And I just ask right now, Lord, that the blessings of Abraham through Jesus Christ will be upon all the councilmen, all the city officials, upon the mayor and everyone here and everybody in Prescott. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done right now, this year, on earth as it is in heaven in Prescott, Arizona.
Amen. Thank you. Yep. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mayor Kirkendall?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kuknio?
Here.
Councilman Arnold?
Here.
Councilman Blair?
Yes.
Councilman Lamerson?
Here.
Councilman Lozelle?
Here.
Councilwoman Wilcox? Here. All present.
Okay. Any announcements?
Only, Mayor, that we do have part 2 of the budget workshop, which is Thursday morning at 9 o'clock over in the library, and we'll be talking about streets and solid waste and the utilities funds.
Okay.
I have one thing, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Very, very important. The Diamondbacks and the Cardinals on TV tonight.
Oh, really? What time do they start?
5 o'clock.
I don't think we'll make it.
That's why I was bringing it up, Mayor.
Sorry.
You're getting the drift
Sorry
now,
about
Mayor.
that, Steve. Okay, let's go immediately to the presentations. Tony, are you? There he is. Welcome.
Welcome, Mayor. Welcome, City Council.
We haven't
How are you
seen
guys today?
haven't seen you in a while. Yeah.
No, down the beach in a while.
Okay.
As I said, Tony Shaka, the Executive Director of the Arizona Wildfire Academy, and this is our 13th year, if you can believe it or not. Mayor, I think you've been on it since the beginning, along with some of the councilmen. What's going around the room is what we call our executive summary or final report, and as an old mentor of mine said, be brief, be bright, and be gone, and I'm going to try that today. So, okay. So today we'll talk about the 2015 Arizona Wildfire and Incident Management Academy that was held at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University for the 13th year this year. Quickly, you can see that we had 679 students, 23 states that were represented. 115 students received scholarship money, and that's pretty much a full ride for some and half on others. Had 100 instructors. One of the things that we like about the Arizona Wildfire Academy is it's a labor of love, and the fact that the instructors do not get salary from the academy. They donated over 5,500 hours of instruction. Most of the fire departments who are going to come in, or other agencies, are either donating their time or their home unit is paying their time. So keeps our cost low for the volunteer firemen, rural firemen, city, county, municipal firemen, and that's kind of been our forte, is trying to keep the cost as low as possible. This year we had a really nice tribute night. Southwest Firefighter of the Year was a guy named Greg Smith from Northwest Fire. He was nominated by his peer group, and we had a very nice celebration. This year, the Herb McElwee Loyalty Award was given to the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors for their generous contribution to Yavapai County firemen. Basically, they have issued a scholarship for $19,000 that pays for all the training, or most of the training, that we can allocate to fire departments in Yavapai County. It's not without saying that the city of Prescott and what they do for us has been the backbone of the Arizona Wildfire Academy. The business that we bring in here, in excess last year of 3,000 room nights, plus all the business that's going on downtown with the local merchants. We try to buy everything local, small business. We try to do very little work on the internet. Our whole focus as the small nonprofit is to continue to support the companies that support us here in this town with different raffle prizes and who step up every day when we ask for something for the Academy. Thank you.
There was a complaint to me that if you didn't work them so hard, they could spend more time and money in town. Did you want to react to that at all?
No, sir, I don't say a thing.
Tony, thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
It's a great event this year, as it always is.
Appreciate it, Mayor.
Thank you. Consent agenda?
Consent agenda. Item 1A, approval of minutes for the city council meetings held on April 7, 2015 and May 12, 2015. Item B, approval to purchase a document retention and disposition module for the city's on-base electronic document management system from Databank IMX in the amount of $19,914.88. Item C, renewal of off-track pari-mutuel wagering permit for Matt's Saloon located at 112 South Montezuma Street, submitted by Turf Paradise. Item D, ratification of emergency procurement for Antelope Hills pump station repairs and authorization of payment to Foster Electric Motor Service Incorporated in an amount of $31,957.71 Golf Course Fund. Item E, award of city contract number 2015-197 to Fireworks Productions of Arizona in the amount of $20,300 for the 2015 annual 4th of July celebration. And item F, award of city contract number 2015-195 for Zone 16 Waterworks materials to FWC Supply LLC in the amount of $15,659.51 Water Fund.
Any comments, questions?
I have one, if I could, Mayor, on item E, city manager. Out of the $20,300 that are going to be spent for the fireworks production, what portion of that is recovered through fees?
Well, I think, Councilman, it varies from year to year, but we look at the 4th of July celebration as a total, and through the donations and the wristband sales and so forth, we've pretty much been at break even in recent years.
Okay. And in the time that we're at with money right now, I just wanted the public to understand that we are trying to break even on a lot of these events, so thank you.
That is the objective.
Chris, you have something? Okay.
No.
Quick question, Craig. Apparently we got the insurance question handled on the fireworks. Wasn't there an insurance question?
Mayor, actually, that was on the attractions, which is a separate contract that would be brought to you subsequently.
Good. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, move to approve consent agenda items 1A through 1F.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Liquor license regular agenda.
Item 2A, public hearing and consideration of a new liquor license application for a Series 12 restaurant license from James Stephen Lally, applicant for the Hungry Monk, located at 220 West Goodwin Street, Suites 101, 201, and 202. Mr. Lally is requesting a new license for a Series 12 restaurant liquor license for the Hungry Monk. The police department has reviewed the application and found it to be in compliance with state law, and the Community Development Department has reviewed the application and found it to be in compliance with zoning requirements and building safety issues. The application and license fees have been paid, and the application has been posted at the proposed location for the required 20 days. No public comments have been received, and the applicant is in attendance.
Okay. Applicant, would you like to come down and let us be able to recognize you when we all come over there after the council meeting?
Hi, everyone.
Tell us a little bit about you're from Chandler, is it?
Well, we have a restaurant in Chandler.
Okay,
I also have a home here in Prescott.
good.
Let me see. So this is our second location. Had no idea I was going to open up a restaurant. This just landed in my lap. So there goes my vacation time up here. But what we are is we're an eatery and a craft beer pub. So we're doing that upstairs. We're completely redoing the downstairs. That's going to be a coffee and wine bar. We probably won't open that for another 2 months or so. So we're making a lot of changes. Some's cosmetic, some's detailed. We're finally putting in a dumbwaiter so we can get food up and down without running outside with it.
Well, there was a couple of them over there before. They kept running up and down the stairs.
Yeah. But I think we've already got 25 folks hired, just ready to launch. Getting pretty itchy.
Well, we're glad you're back open, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Now you'll have food right away?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion for the...
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Was there anyone else from the public that wished to speak on this item?
Yeah, we hadn't got that far yet. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we're ready for the motion.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Now the chair will accept a recommendation to approve the liquor license.
Mayor, I move to approve for liquor license application number 121-33620 for a Series 12 license for the Hungry Monk located at 220 West Goodwin Street, Suite 101 and 201 and 202.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes
Okay.
unanimously.
You're about ready.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being a part of our town. Thank you.
Thrilled.
Okay, let's go to the regular agenda.
Item 3A, presentation from the League of Arizona League of Cities and Towns Public Safety Personnel Retirement System Pension Task Force.
Thank you, Mayor. As council is aware and the public aware, we have council's put an item on the ballot for a PSPRS tax to eliminate the liability. As we had discussed that, we have always talked about the fact that that takes care of the liability that exists now, but what about fixing the pension system into the future? Well, the league, as we've discussed, has a pension task force that has been working on this for 2 years, I think, putting together a plan, which has recently been rolled out. And we have the chairman of the pension task force, Scott McCarty, and the vice chairman, Mike Townsend, here to do a presentation today to council and the public about what is in that yardstick. And with that, I will turn it over to them.
Very good. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. There will be questions from the council. Do you prefer to get through the presentation and then take them, or take them as they come?
Mayor, I think it's okay to take them as we come because the presentation kind of builds upon itself. So
Okay.
Feel free to get my attention and we'll try to get them answered as we go through that.
Very good.
Mayor, Council, thanks again for the opportunity to be here. Again, I'm Scott McCarty, the chair of the task force, and with me I have Mike Townsend, who is the vice chair. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to come up here and talk to your community about PSPRS, sort of where it is, as you all very familiar with that, and I think more importantly to the tenor of this conversation, where we think it should go. So we're going to talk about a little bit of overview about what the task force has been doing since last summer. We're going to share with you our preliminary reform recommendations, which has become known as the yardstick as we went through the evolution of those. Talk to you a little bit about the calendar in terms of how we see this leading up to the legislative session early in 2016, and then obviously answer any comments or questions that you have as we go through this.
Just a question really quick, please.
Sure.
So that the public, and it's a matter of the public record, could you please share with the public who makes up the task force?
It's on page 5.
I understand that.
Yeah, well, the task force was put together by the League of Cities and Towns in association with the City Managers Association of Arizona, as well as Government Finance Officers Association. So the representative on the 15-member task force minus one are all government employees, which have...
Hey, thank you. That's what I wanted the public to hear.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. So a little bit about the task force. We were formed back in June of 2014. And again, as I said, in partnership with the City Managers Association and the Government Financiers Office Association of Arizona. We have 15 members, and our task through the League's Executive Committee, which is 15 members from various communities around the state, was to review all aspects of PSPRS, identify areas of improvement, and then make the necessary reform recommendations. Just by way of background, and I know you all have a much more advanced understanding of your plans than honestly most cities and towns in this state. But there's 256 individual plans. In your case, you have 2, 1 police and 1 fire. That represents about 32,000 active and retirees across the entire state of Arizona. As you well are aware, the benefits for all the the retirees are the same regardless of the difference of plans, but the financial condition varies significantly by plan. In the aggregate, all the plans in total are about $6.6 billion underfunded as of June 30th, 2014. For perspective, that's about $1,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state of Arizona in terms of an unfunded liability. Kind of goes to the severity of the system. The employer rates vary by the plan based on the funded status that I just alluded to, and then effective July 1st, 2015, the employee contributions will be capped or fixed at the 11.65%. So a little bit of background in terms of the context of the current system. Here are the actual 15 task force members. We put those up there for really several reasons. One is to get a sense of the varying professional backgrounds that we have. We have finance people on there. We have professional managers on there. We have HR staff on there, and we have an economist on the task force, and then also to represent the different demographics of the plan members. We have big cities, big counties, small counties scattered across the state. So we have a pretty good representative sample of the 256 plans that are actually in the system. So that slide's as much there for your reference as anything else. And then all the information, all the presentations, all the written documentation that the task force has either reviewed or created is referenced there on the League's website, and then there's the path about how to actually get to all that. But it's all there for both councils, members, as well as the public to look at. It's been a very transparent process as we went through this process. I alluded to earlier about members of the task force and who they are, but in terms of the audience, at just about every meeting we had all the stakeholders were there. So members of labor associations, legislative staff was there, staff from the governor's office, House and Senate were all there. They weren't on the task force, but they were there in attendance at the meetings, and a lot of times participated in the actual conversations that we had. So can stand here and tell you we felt like it's been a very inclusive process to this point, and part of the reason that Mike and I are out here today is at the direction of the League's Executive Committee. They want that to remain a very inclusive process.
How many meetings did you have?
Oh boy, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 formal meetings since June.
Yeah.
And probably had about several formal presentations from about 8 or 10 organizations that are outside the state that have been involved in pension, public safety pension issues throughout the country.
Okay.
So a little bit about our approach. We kind of broke it down into 3 phases, Mayor, to the question you just asked. The first one was really just about information and education. So we had folks that had been involved in pension reform issues across the country come and talk to us about what they've learned, both good and bad, going through their process, really, and brought a much broader perspective to this whole issue than just here in the state of Arizona. We found that to be very helpful. I think in total we had, like I said, we had probably about 8 or 10 presentations from folks outside of the state of Arizona. Inclusive of that, we also had the PSPRS administration staff come and talk to us, their investment staff come talk to us about how our particular system works. But we were as interested in what's going on in the rest of the country as we were about our system. Phase 2, I think you all have had some exposure to this given what you've done and where you're headed, as Mark alluded to earlier. But really, Phase 2 for us was really focused in on the employers and making sure that we could make some tangible recommendations to them in the near term in lieu of the ultimate reform recommendations that the task force would be undertaking. So under that Phase 2, we really focused on two things. One is make sure that the entities understand that this pension system is their pension system. It's not like the ASRS system where you're just part of a much bigger pool. This is your system, and what happens in your community affects your plan. Here in Prescott, again, you have a police and a fire plan. So manage your plan. And then the other, or the second real important message that we were able to deliver was that unfunded liability, the amount of liability that was in excess of your assets, is debt, and treat it as debt, and think about from a financing perspective how you want to try to address that in the long term. And I want to stop here and say that from the task force perspective, we're greatly appreciative of the staff work and the council work that you all have done on this issue here for your community, because that was really the message we were trying to get out there, is understand your situation and start to develop a plan that feels right for your community. And obviously anytime you have to raise taxes is a very difficult and sensitive subject, but we appreciate the ability and the leadership that you all have demonstrated in dealing with this for the city of Prescott. And I really wanted to make sure I pointed that out. There are a lot of cities that are at different stages of deciding and understanding their financial condition, but they will be making similar decisions to you. It might not be a tax increase, but it is in the realm of directing more financial resources to this issue. And as I shared with Craig earlier, you are on the leading edge of that. But over the next 4 to 6 months, you will hear a lot of stories about what different cities are doing to try to deal with their unfunded liability. So that was the second phase. And then the third phase is what we'll transition into now, is really the yardstick. And these are what we believe to be the components of a well-designed system moving forward here in the state of Arizona for our public safety employees. So the task force really started this area by asking ourselves two key questions. What should the employee, the retiree, the employer, and the taxpayer get out of this pension system? So we're trying to balance all four of those needs and wants and desires in one system. And then the corollary question is then, well, how do you accomplish that? So what type of plan do we need? What do we need to do with cost sharing? How do you deal with annual pension increases? So it kind of gets into a lot of the details there. But those are really the two key questions that the yardstick is intended to answer. You have in your packet, the yardstick was really consolidated down to one. It's a one-page document, and what we'll spend time doing now is really going through the characteristics of that plan. So some of the guiding principles is we need to make sure that it's adequate and affordable. Adequate refers to the retiree themselves. Is it going to provide them with a retirement income stream that's valuable and worthy of their public service? Affordable really gets to the taxpayer. What about that amount? How can we define that to be affordable? The whole system needs to be financially solvent. And then in this realm, when you're dealing with the public money, it's very important that the system be transparent and accountable. So the yardstick's purpose, again, is to identify the goals, the characteristics, elements of a viable and sustainable public safety system for the state of Arizona. So that's all public safety and firefighters, whether they're city, county, special purpose districts such as fire districts. It's supposed to aid in the public policy discussion. We shared this document with the League's Executive Committee on Friday, May the 15th, and I could tell you in just over a week, we've had a lot of good public discussion centered around this document, so it really seems to be hitting on that point. And then the last thing, and we'll share it with you towards the end of the presentation, it really becomes a tool to evaluate not only the current system, but also some reform proposals that are either out there now or that may come forward as we continue this public discussion about this issue. So its components, there's really 5 of them. We're going to take a minute now and we'll go through each one of those. And what we're trying to do here is explain to you the component itself and then our rationale and basis for making that recommendation. So let's start by talking about the type of plan. We're recommending that it stays the same type of plan that we have now, which is a defined benefit plan. which means that the retirees' retirement is predetermined by a formula based on their compensation, their age, and a tenure of service. In other words, a combination of all three, basically the same way that the system works now. We spent a lot of time looking at that structure or that model as opposed to the other model, which is more of a defined contribution plan, a 401A plan. That's the type of plan that you see in the private sector. But as we've spent a lot of time studying that, and again, we had people come in from outside the state, a defined benefit plan is really the most effective pension plan for public safety employees, given the nature of their work. They tend to have shorter work careers and longer retirements, and this type of system really is the most effective way when you're pooling things together as a way to provide those financial resources for those retirees in their retirement. But we did look at that we did look at the other models and came to the conclusion that the same type of system we have now we should continue with. From the perspective of the second element, spent a lot of time talking about the status of the current system and how it has been legally challenged back since its most recent enactments back in 2003. And what we're recommending here is that whatever the new system is, it should be free from legal challenge, which in essence means that you can't make changes to either current employees or current retirees. We found ourselves in several lawsuits here in the state of Arizona, as well as you look across the country. Anytime that there's been changes to current employees or current retirees, those changes have wound up being litigated and for the most part have wound up being upheld to the point that it's been come back that the employer didn't have the ability under the contract clause or some other legal provisions to make changes to either existing or current retirees. So from our perspective, we identified that as an element where we should just be free from legal challenge, and as we develop the new system, make sure that whatever we are recommending it does not have the ability to be tied up in courts. If you think about it, the last reform recommendation or reform changes that were made here in 2011 were still tied up in court on one particular legal case, and it'll probably be about 5 years by the time that legal case is actually settled. So feel really strongly that if we can avoid our recommendations being tied up in court, it'll have a more immediate impact not only on the retirees, the members, but also the employers. The third element really gets into some of the major changes of the proposal, which is to really create a new statewide system. And so what that means, based on the last slide, is you can't change the current system for current retirees or current employees. So what we need to do is create a new system for new employees. In the sake of our discussion, those would be for employees that are hired after July 1st, 2016. So the current system would really remain in place until literally the last beneficiary passed away. So this town of Prescott's fire department would stay in existence maybe for the next 38 or 44 years until that last beneficiary actually retired or passed away. But the new system would house all the new employees, fire or police, that you start hiring after July 1st. And they'd all be in one pooled system. So Prescott Fire, Prescott Police would be in the same system with Phoenix, Mesa, et cetera, just like the ASRS system. For those of you that are familiar with, all municipal workers are put into one pension system. Mayor, you look like you have a question there.
Scott, you keep mentioning till the retiree passes away. What about the dependents?
Yeah, that would be the same thing. Probably the technical term would be the appropriate beneficiary, whether it's the retiree or they have some sort of surviving spouse provision. It would be until that person passed away as well. It's always awkward to frame that when you're talking about, passing away, but what we mean is until the last eligible member is no longer alive. So this part of it does a couple things. It looks like ASRS. It avoids legal challenges that we talked about earlier, because under not only state law, but what we think federal law, you can make prospective challenges for new people coming into the system. There's been precedents to do that, not only within PSPRS back in 2011, but also ASRS several years ago. So we feel comfortable that this sort of does several of the things that we talked about earlier. It keeps ourselves out of the legal issues, but does a lot in terms of creating one system and mirroring a lot of the positive elements of ASRS. And speaking of elements, that's what the next 4 or 5 slides are really getting into kind of the key elements of the system. The first one I alluded to earlier is really pooling the assets and the liabilities across all the public safety service providers in the state of Arizona. So again, DPS, Department of Public Safety, would be in the same system as Prescott, as Glendale, as Phoenix. Everybody's going to be in that one system for new hires effective July 1st, 2016. And I think what this does is really on two levels. It eliminates some of the extreme financial exposure that may exist under the current system. In other words, everybody's their own system, and if they had a tragic event, as you all did up here in your system, you all understand as good as anybody of those 256 plans the financial impact that such a tragic event can have on your system. So we take that off the table, moving ahead. In your case, you have a $70 million combined unfunded liability between police and fire today, and as you well know, that's expected to, over the time, to cost you $165 million over the next 22 years. So when you pool assets and you pool liabilities, there may be that exposure from one particular event, but that's spread across the entire state and all the public service providers.
Just a question and a point of clarification, if at all possible.
Sure.
I think this may be to Mr. Petracchi and maybe to Mark, or maybe the city manager. $70 million liability didn't come by our event. Our event, in a way, did contribute to it, but it's not. We had the $70 million liability or close to it before Yarnell Hill.
Correct, and I didn't mean to imply that it did. I just, Yarnell was part of that number.
I just want to make that clarification, okay?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. So the other part of this recommendation really gets at how public safety in the state of Arizona is performed. And if you think about it, whether it's police or fire, it's performed without any relationship to the boundaries. So if something's going on in Prescott Valley, Prescott PD will go over there and help. That's true down in the valley. So from a consistency perspective, we think setting the pension system up to be reflective of actually how the field, how things operate in the field, there's a lot of consistency with that. So there are no boundaries in the field. If you need help, if Prescott Valley needs help, Prescott's going to help out, vice versa. And so the not having jurisdictional boundaries operationally, we think having the same pension system set up that way makes a lot of sense. In other words, within the state, all public safety functionality is really done at a statewide level, going wherever the resources need to be. And so to have a pension system where that's reflective seems to be consistent with us. The next element of the recommendation has to do with fully funding and trying to very clearly define what that is. And the task force spent a lot of time talking about this particular issue and finally came to the recommendation that what we need to strive for in a new system is that assets at least equal liabilities, or 100%, or at least 100% over an economic cycle. So what we're acknowledging there is that the value of your assets and liabilities might go up and down over a recessionary period or not, but we should still strive to have a system that's fully funded. What we think one of the issues we've had under the current system, you have 256 different individual funded status under the current system, and it's hard to keep track of what's good and what's bad. And so some entities have come to define 80% funded as good, and others strive to have 100%. But we think under one system, the objective needs to be 100%, not only from the equity perspective of the taxpayer, but also from the system member. So if you think about it, if assets always equal liabilities, what that means to the finance folks that were sitting on the task force is up to that point, everybody's always paid their fair share. The taxpayers have paid their fair share, and the members have paid their fair share. If you fall below 100%, that means that future taxpayers and future members are going to have to make up that gap. So if you're at 75% funded, and the ultimate goal is to get 25% funded, that difference of 25% is going to come from future members and future taxpayers. So part of what we really focus on here, which is much more of an emphasis than the current system, is to stay focused on that 100% funding and make sure on a year-to-year basis that that's the target that we're striving to hit. Understand that one year we might be 120% funded because the stock market's up, or several years later we might be 92% funded because the stock market is down, but we're still using 100% as that target. And then there's just one target because there's one system. There's not 256.
How do you repeat a kaboom of like 99 when the tech bubble burst? And when you lose a third of your total assets, how do you keep up with what you're saying you want to keep up with in a catastrophic event like that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and you'll see in a few slides we talk about the investment policy. So I think some of the answer to that is limiting your risk to any kind of industry kaboom, if you will, like that. And then the other is through some policy and some governance issues. We think we can set some more clear directives and objectives that are more easily measured than you have when there's 256 different individual plans.
Is there an estimated annual rate of return under this plan that you all would have to achieve?
We haven't set that yet, but I will tell you that the current 7.85% that the current system uses, we believe to be high as an operational goal to achieve year in and year out. And so as this construct of the yardstick continues to gain support, I think you'll see that be the next evolution, is we'll start putting some numbers to what we're trying to do, but that's a very good question.
In follow-up to that, going back just a few slides, the existing system, if we were to say we're going to pay out the remainder of the benefits that are due there, that would become the city's responsibility. I think one of the challenges that I'm looking at is that could be upwards of 65 years for the city. If we walked away from PSPRS in lieu of a new system. And one of the things that got us where we are today is the liberties that were taken by some within PSPRS, within the investments, some of the issues that have taken place, bad management, bad policy. And when I see something that's still talking about, well, if we don't hit 100%, it's going to be on future taxpayers. Well, God willing, I'll be here for 50 more years, so I qualify as a future taxpayer. And so I'm really interested in those nuts and bolts to see how that would actually work, and we wouldn't just end up 20 years from now in the exact same situation where we haven't hit even the most basic benchmarks, and we have a fund that's 80% funded, and all of a sudden our city manager comes to the council at the time and says, you've got $1 million bill from the retirement system again. Not to mention the $77 million that becomes $165 million that doesn't really get us all the way through our obligation for 65 years. So those are some things that are going around in my head at the moment.
No, those are great questions, and at the end there's a couple slides where I'll take the opportunity to pull that together and answer your question, because this concept of sort of having two systems for an extended period of time is something that we've got to get our minds around. But again, it goes back to the point that we just don't feel like we can make changes to the people that are in the current system, so we've got to keep that system in place until either themselves or their survivors pass away. But there's a couple slides later where I'll be able to pull that together and answer your question more directly.
That unfunded liability number is based on a whole lot of actuarial assumptions. Are you recommending that those assumptions be reviewed every year as circumstances change? Very good point.
Through the changes we're recommending to governance, we are making some significant recommendations about the structure, who those decisions are made by, and then how they're made. So you'll see that in a few slides. But to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about funded status, and that really, of all the slides, this is really the focal point from the management of the new system, is we always need to be managing to a plan that's at least 100% funded over the economic cycle. So as you see our recommendations about governance and everything, it's all intended to create a structure that tries to achieve this objective. Everybody's life is easier, good. There's no problems in any pension system if that pension system is at least 100% funded. The other one that is somewhat controversial is where we landed with cost sharing. And what we're recommending here is that under a new system, or the characteristics of a new system, the cost sharing should be 50-50 between the employee and the employer. That's what it is now in the ASRS system. That was sort of one rationale for us conclusion. But I think the other thing is it's at 50-50, it's sort of a neutral position about benefit costs. So if there's a discussion about increasing benefits, survivor benefits, annual pension benefits, whatever that might be, when the costs are shared 50-50, then everybody's at a neutral position about wanting to see that implemented, and then literally sharing in those costs if those changes are made. So under the proposed system, anytime we increase the benefit, what we're recommending is you have to increase contribution rates. You can't increase the benefit, change assumption rates about investment income, or think you're going to earn more money. It literally needs to be simple money in, which is contributions, to simple money out, which is benefits. So if we're going to change the benefits on any level, it needs to be supported by contribution increases. So that's why this issue is so important, that it's a 50-50 split as we start talking about benefit increases.
Taking kind of a sidestep with that specifically, you've got over 90 cities and towns, 253 current accounts. How do you keep a community such as Prescott? We aren't seeing exponential growth in our employee sector like you are in some of these communities that started in the last 10 years. And so you've got a situation where we know from our class and comp study our wages are below market in a lot of areas. How do we stay competitive when you've got communities that are able to pay significantly more? You've got a 50-50 cost sharing in the retirement contribution. It's another one of those issues that I see coming up from our perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we talked about that. If you look at the current system, a significant part of the contribution rate is the result of the unfunded liability. So if a city's contribution rate is 50%, about 30% of that rate, roughly, is the unfunded liability, and the normal cost is about 20%. So the benefit of creating a new system is that there is no unfunded liability. There's just the normal cost. So we think under the auspice of the new system, which is really where your future applicant pool is going to come from, there's a lot of equity there because everybody's essentially going to be paying the same contribution rate, employee and employer, at the shared rate. What we are seeing now is on some of these cities that their high employer contribution rate is affecting their ability to fill positions. Mm-hmm. And so they're sitting on those. So I think if you, under the perspective of a new system, the employer contribution rate will be the same for all employers across the entire state under the new system, which is different than we have now. So we talked about the implications of all of this about creating and maintaining a work environment that's positive for people to want to come not only to the state of Arizona, but we don't want them leaving one entity for another for financial reasons such as this. So we think we've accomplished that, again, under the auspice of one system. So we talked about cost sharing. The next element is talking about funding either new benefits or benefit increases. And again, as I alluded to earlier, what we believe is those need to be fully embedded in the actuarial assumptions of the new system, which is different than how the current plan has operated. So from the day that a new employee starts, we're going to plan on that person when they retire getting some sort of annual increase as a retiree. It's not going to be funded towards the end of their career. It'll literally be funded as part of the contribution that they make as well as the employer makes the day that they start working in this profession. So it'll be able to mitigate a lot of the volatility that you're seeing now in the rates, especially as you have more and more groups of employees starting to retire in particular entities. You spread that over their entire work career.
One of the issues specifically that's affected PSPRS is the COLAs for the retirees that have continued even when current employees aren't able to see raises and other things. Right. The fund's still having to pay that out. Right. So you're saying that would be built into the initial contribution of that employee.
Right, exactly.
Because that's been a big challenge. That's a big reason, big part of the number that our unfunded liability comes from.
Exactly, and that's really what we talk specifically to on the next slide. So when it comes to retiree pension increases, we believe a well-designed system should allow for those. They should fund those, again, as I talked about, from the day that the employee starts working, and they should be there so that the retiree maintains their purchasing power. So if they're earning $1,500 a year or $1,500 a month the month they first retire, 10 years later, they should have that same relative value of their retirement. They shouldn't gain any value, nor should they lose any value. Council member, to answer your point, the current system is more of a dividend model. The better the system does, the greater the benefit the retiree gets. There's not a correlation between what the retiree is using the money for and the performance of the fund. So here we're saying, yes, a good system should have an inflator of some sort for your pension. It needs to be funded from the day you start working, and it should be given out on, like, just think of it as a CPI. It should be based on what you're using the money for, not how the assets performed for the prior 12 months. There's just not a connection between those two elements. They're literally mutually exclusive.
But I would think that paying increased benefits from contribution increases would be your second go-to. I would think a properly managed fund might be able to cover that going forward anyway.
Could you restate that question for me, or her statement?
Well, you're saying that benefit increases are going to be paid for by the contribution increases from the employee and employer, where if you had a properly managed fund, that should pay for the increases there going forward.
Okay, I understand. I think
secondary would be having you put in more money.
Right. The clarification is whatever those anticipated increases are to be, they would be part of the rate. The contribution rate may not be part of the actual contribution rate increase. It'll be actually part of the base rate. That was the point that I was trying to make. But I understand your point in terms of moving forward. Okay. So a little bit about, again, the purpose of what the annual pension increase is for, and trying to clarify that. And then the last element that's of significance is, this really came from our discussions with the labor associations. For the sake of discussion, probably about a third of the members that are in the current system are not members of Social Security. So at the entity level, along the way of the history of the entity, the entities like the City of Phoenix has had the option to opt out of Social Security for their fire department, for example, and they have done that. So what we're talking about here is you have members of the current system who have 2 legs of the retirement stool or 3 legs of the retirement stool. The 3 leg being the system itself, Social Security, and then your own personal savings. That would be a 3-legged stool. There's some members who just have the system and their personal savings. They don't have Social Security. So the task force spent a lot of time on this issue and really feels like creating a 3rd leg of a stool under the new system would add value to the current system, because then you're going to have every member of that system is going to have 3 legs of a stool. The 3rd leg in some cases might be Social Security, and in some cases it might be this plan, which is in lieu of Social Security. But it's important for the relative value of the system we're creating that we know that all members have 3 legs of the stool. If a member only has 2, there's more reliance on this system. They sort of expect more money and a stronger retirement out of it. And then they're sitting next to a person who has 3 legs of the stool who may or may not have that expectation. So with 3 legs of the stool, we're trying to level the expectations and the objectives of the system. We don't know specifically what that contribution rate would be, but it would be the same employee and employer match amount. And honestly, if you think about it, for those of us that are further along in our career, if we had the option to opt out of Social Security age 25, have that money set aside that we contribute as well as the employer, the value of that money when we go to retire is going to be much greater than whatever that value is when you're in the Social Security system. And that's what we heard from labor, is they needed a bridge from when they retire until some of their Medicare and other health care provisions sort of kick in. This is really our answer to their issue about maintaining the drop system. The drop system is not recommended under the current system, but a lot about the drop system was sort of bridging that gap between retirement and when they hit in for Medicare and other health care benefits. We think creating this, again, along the continuum of their career is another way to get to the same point. But this is a different element than I think a lot of people thought we would be making a recommendation about.
If the 3rd leg isn't Social Security, what is it? Is it like a 401k?
Yeah, this would be more like a defined contribution plan. So they would put it in, let's say the employee would put in 3% of gross pay and the employer would put in 3%, and then that would grow over time. But it would be aggregately managed through the system. And that's why we kind of called it in lieu of Social Security program. We're trying to create that 3rd leg where they have some flexibility at their discretion to make withdrawals and pay for whatever expenses they have through their retirement.
And that would be up to the individual employer to...
No, whatever the way that this is laid out, we haven't set the percentages, but it would be required. So under Under the new system, just as whatever the contribution rate would be for the system, we'd set a contribution rate for this in lieu of Social Security. But remember, it's just for those employers that aren't currently in the Social Security system. So those employers. So this isn't going to be true for everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Craig, are we in the Social Security system or not? Or Mark?
Our police department is in, and our fire department is not. Our older fire department, yes.
Okay.
And that's pretty typical of employers. The police are in Social Security and fire is out. So
just out of curiosity, what would be the age of retirement or ability to pull benefits, and what would be the length of service requirement?
Yeah, I'll have the vice chair answer that question. He's got that at the top of his head here.
Well, because it's a deferred comp with the tax, it's set by the IRS, so they have to meet whatever requirements they would have for a defined contribution to be tax-free.
Okay.
So I think that's the last slide on sort of the key elements of the plan. I alluded to the last section, which is governance. Again, here, this is where we're making some recommendations about structure. So there's a handful of elements. We've got the system design, you've got the funding policy, we've got the investment policy that we alluded to earlier. And I think if you think of all of these structure elements, there's a couple things to remember. One is it's all now one system, so it's one set of everything. There's one set of financial information, there's one funded status, and there's one set of performance measures, whatever those are defined to be. So it becomes a whole lot easier to manage this system, not only from an administrative perspective, but from a policy objective standpoint. This is what we set out for the system to do. Are we doing it, yes or no? What are the knobs we can turn to make sure that we're delivering that policy objective? Right now, under the current system with 256, it's almost impossible for every plan to be at the same financial condition and be at that same period of evolution, given the length and the maturity and all kinds of variables. But under one system with one governance structure, we think it's a whole lot easier to manage, a whole lot more effective to manage, and for that reason, we think the system itself will be better. So that's relative to the system design, the funding policy, and the investment policy. So again, talk a little bit about, we talked about investments earlier. Again, when you're dealing with a system that's fully funded or close to fully funded, your investment objectives there may be a little different. Maybe you're not searching for the amount of yield that you would be in another environment. And so all of this starts to sort of kind of comes together when you really think about this in the context of a new system with no unfunded liability that they're trying to deal with. You can probably be a little bit more conservative in your investments over a longer period of time. And when you start diluting that funded status, you become very reactionary. And so that's why, again, back to that 100% goal, it's really, really important under this new system that really becomes the focal point of the new system. A couple other things about governance that are important as we looked at this really has to do with the Board of Trustees, or what we call now the PSPRS Board. It's our recommendation and our observations that that Board of Trustees needs to look and feel like a corporate America Board of Trustees. These need to be people that are independent, qualified experts with the fiduciary responsibility of keeping the eye on that 100% funded status that I look for as they're accountable for public monies. So in our minds, independent means that there would not be just a plan member on the board. They'd need to be, however independent and qualified got defined, but typically these may be folks that are actually within the state of Arizona, or in some cases they may reside outside the state of Arizona to meet this criteria. But it's completely different than the current makeup of the existing board, again, from a fiduciary responsibility.
And who would they be responsible to, or who would have oversight?
You know, I think that's a good question. We've talked about, well, how would they be on the board? I think from a fiduciary responsibility, their responsibility is to that 100% funded status, which is both the members and the plan members, as well as the employers and the taxpayers. So that's who ultimately they should be accountable to through that one set of performance measures that we alluded to earlier. So we talked about the board.
Do you have a model of that particular proposal?
In terms of the board itself,
right. Who they would be? Yeah, is there a model in existence today that is exactly what you just laid out?
I wouldn't say there's one exactly in existence today for a public safety system. I think there's models of boards of directors that are outside of a pension system that we replicate, but not within a public safety pension system per se.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the last recommendation has to do with, again, under the auspice of one system, has to do with administration. So from our perspective, we think the state could have one pension system, the Arizona State Pension System, and think of that as having two divisions. One would be public safety, and one would be essentially the current non-public safety personnel, the ASRS system. We think there's a lot of value to consolidate a lot of the administrative functions, whether they're cost-related, customer service, education and training, accessibility of information, to over a period of time get to one system. Think about some of the administrative functions that are performed, like such as investing. The basic goal between ASRS and PSPRS are the same: to invest the money and then pay out the pensions as they're required by law. They both have the same high-level objectives, so let's give some thought to consolidating that administratively. And then when you do that, one of the sort of ancillary issues to that is under the disability. Instead of having 256 boards as we have now to be consistent under one system, you would just have one disability board. That's how ASRS operates right now. And it goes, all disabilities go through the same process. The decision is made by the same set of people. And under the 256 entity model, we don't have that right now. And as we've got some feedback since we started, people have been, a lot of elected officials have been very clear about the local board and their desire to have that looked at and look at it. There's a lot of elected officials feel at the local level perhaps that they can't get the level of expertise and experience for board members that they would prefer, and a lot of elected officials like the idea of one board where everybody is being treated the same by the same legislative group that's making a decision. So we get there for that, and then we also get there from an administrative perspective. A little bit about the calendar, and then I'll talk a little bit about applications of the tool, and then take any other questions you all might have. So again, we released our recommendations to the League's Executive Committee on May 15th. They directed us from May to August to go out and to communicate, get feedback like we're doing today. We've talked to labor, we've talked to several legislative staff people already. We're going to be doing a presentation at the Arizona City Managers Association over the summer, at the GFOAZ conference this summer. And the idea is to compile all these thoughts and recommendations and include those in our final recommendations to the League's Executive Committee, which we'll deliver to them at the League Conference August 22nd down in Tucson. So it's very much a vetting process now, a back and forth, hear what people have to say, make sure that the yardstick we're recommending is comprehensive and it's been fully vetted. And again, that's part of the reason that Mike and I are here today. So that's a little bit about the yardstick. Let me talk a little bit about, there's a couple, oops, we don't have a couple slides about the application. Let me talk a little bit about the application of the yardstick. One of the things the League Executive Committee asked us to do was take the yardstick and compare it to the labor proposal. And Mayor, could you clarify for me whether this legislative body is familiar with the labor proposal? Have they heard a specific presentation on that?
Yeah, two of us have.
Yeah, two of us went out to it, and we kind of briefed everybody else.
Okay. So part of the value of the yardstick is that it's very comprehensive. It talks about governance and objectives and goals. And I think what you'll see, and we can share that document with you. Well, I know when we had, in your packet, the cover letter that I sent to the League's Executive Committee, I think it's either the third or fourth page. It has sort of an at-a-glance evaluation of the current system and the yardstick, and the town manager has it there, so I know you got it. So if that's available to you, it's not on the screen, but I'll walk you through. Oh, we'll just put it up on the Elmo here. Thanks, Mark. Perfect. We'll put up the labor one, which is the next page. Thank you. Thanks. So the point of this is we created the yardstick, the tool, and this is an application of it. So on the left side, you see the element of the yardstick that we talked about, the defined benefit plan, the free from legal challenge. And on the right column, what we did is we really evaluated that in terms of the labor proposal. So I'll go through some of the highlights. At the defined benefit plan, yes, both are the same. The free from legal challenge, we don't believe that's going to be the case under the labor proposal. Their proposal is to sort of open up the state's constitution and then close that. And again, their proposal is based on the assumption that there would be changes to current retirees and current benefits in terms of how their retirement increase is calculated. So we think that theirs is not free from that criteria of legal challenge. And we essentially go down each characteristic or element of the yardstick and compare it to the plan. And I think that the big takeaway is, one, what I just alluded to, is that their plan makes changes to current retirees and current employees, and that's going to be highly subject to legal challenges. And then we deal a lot with governance and fully funded, and we have a 50-50 cost share. Their plan has their employee contribution capped at 6.5%. So they have a lot of caps and segregation of monies. They don't talk about a pooled system for those kinds of reasons. So long story short is the yardstick is vastly different than the labor proposal in terms of how it would measure up to the yardstick. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but from the evaluation of the yardstick, there's not a lot of characteristics in the labor proposal that we'd recommend as being elements of a new system that we'd like to see.
When you're referring to labor proposal, are you referring to the proposal that is being advocated by Brian Jeffries?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So with that,
He's only firefighters are pretty much on board with that, but not necessarily, from what we heard at this presentation, the police departments. Is that your understanding?
I think that's an accurate statement, yes. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Mike and I are here to answer any other questions you have, but I do want to conclude with the closing comments. Again, as I started, great leadership up here, not only from the staff perspective, but from your perspective about dealing with this issue in your community. One of the hardest messages for us is we believe that unfunded liability, it is what it is. We've got to figure out a way to deal with that, and while we're dealing with that, we need to focus on the creation of a new system to ensure ourselves that what we have in the current system doesn't repeat itself. So with that, we're here to answer any other questions or thoughts that you might have.
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like you've got a great idea and handle on how to go forward. But my understanding is you want to go to the legislative body and, no offense, Noel, depend on them on fixing this system, correct?
The plan is that the yardstick be the tool by which any legislative proposal is evaluated against.
Why not take it to the people? You guys get networked enough and just get the signatures out, put it on a ballot, and bypass the legislative body.
I mean, that's obviously an option. Again, we were put together by the League's executive committee. Their direction was to look at the yardstick, and I think it's a great opportunity from the task force members' perspective. Our charge was to create the yardstick. As that process evolves politically, I think that's an option. I mean, anything at this point is an option. What we're trying to do is coalesce what we want out of the new system. There's going to be many different ways to get there, and that's the transition of the conversation that we're starting to see right now. Is if everybody agrees with this, what's the best way to get there now? So I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
You bet.
You know, I want to thank you and the task force for putting this time in, because it's not a pleasant thing to do. You know, we'd much rather build ballparks or things like that. But I'm just glad this conversation is finally picking up steam. I hate seeing it get to this point when we try and tackle it. The Jeffries presentation that we saw went in a little more detailed description of the fixes that could be taking place. And I think some of the things that undoubtedly need to be fixed is when you're working under investment rules that were set up in 1968, they really cripple you and limit you on what you can and can't do. I hope the guy who lost a third of the fund, I hope we beat the hell out of him on his way out. You know, I mean, that was coming. To lose that much and not have any accountability where someone says, hey, stop, let's take our losses and come back. We need to set in things on the investment rules that won't let that happen again, get the diversification going. And, you know, this is like common stuff. I mean, this isn't new investment strategy. You know, I think the oversight over whoever let that happen was awful. It was just not a good thing to happen. And I think you're right. This has to hold up to lawsuits, or else years go by and nothing gets fixed. And we see the detriment to our general fund that it's taken its toll. And I mean, going out for, it doesn't seem like much. We're going out for a 0.55 increase. Well, we run our general fund on 1%. So this is a huge thing to go out and ask the taxpayers to jump in on. And you know, because the departments are running really well. You look at their spending, it's pretty much right on pace. It's this fund that we got to get a hold of, and we're looking of seriously cutting down on the basic general services that we provide the city if this doesn't get fixed. You know, and I think we asked Brian Jeffries, and he said that we seem to be the only city that's attacking the debt specifically. And when that debt goes away, the tax goes away. Other cities are launching into public safety taxes that seem like they could possibly go on forever. You mentioned earlier that look for other cities to be coming forward with taxing issues to try and fix this problem. How soon do you expect to see that?
That's great comments and a good question. What I was referring to is there's going to be other cities that try to deal with their unfunded liability. They may or may not solve it on the revenue side, as you all have. So I can speak from my experience in Queen Creek as their finance director. We're going to literally make a payment to PSPRS for our unfunded liability in our fire system. So we're going to take that money out of our reserves and make that payment. What some of the other cities are starting to do is, in cases where they were going to issue debt to build a municipal facility or a park or a street or whatever, they're actually looking at taking that cash now and putting it to PSPRS instead of actually well, let me back up. Instead of paying cash for a new park or a street or whatever capital improvement, they're going to actually look at issuing debt for that and then taking the cash and putting it directly against their unfunded liability as a way to buy down their unfunded liability. But that, again, as I said, that's entity specific. And you're starting to see cities look at that as they go through their budget process about how much of that unfunded liability they want to try to pay off over whatever number of years. Right now it's set at 22 years. There's a lot of elected officials that think that that's just too long. So they're putting together 5-year plans or 7-year plans to pay that down out of reserves and excess revenues over expenses.
And is there any talk about changing some of the rules at the state level on how we can get rid of this unfunded liability? You know, could we bond out for that at a super low interest rate, get that done with, and then, because it seems like the longer it goes on, we're actually, the quicker we pay it off. If we pay it off in 16 years, it saves us $80 million, I think, something like that.
This is one of those issues where you understand the compounding of interest, don't you, in terms of how that can be avoided. Couple answers to your question. We've got 2 conversations going on about possible remedies to the debt. The first is we've had several conversations with the Treasurer's Office about creating a program where they could perhaps loan money to some of these really hardly hit cities such as yourselves or Bisbee, and have some kind of loan program where the interest rate is much lower than the assumed rate of interest that the liability is growing at. So essentially it'd be a cost avoidance number like you alluded to. And then under the confines of a closed system, we'd be looking at a tool that's available across the country except for Arizona, which is called issuing pension obligation bonds. So essentially you go out and you say your liability is $70 million, you issue bonds for that amount, and you make payments to bondholders, and you basically pay off your unfunded liability to PSPRS, but you have a bonded obligation. Again, you can pick up that interest rate spread or that arbitrage spread. So once we get into the context of closing a system and sort of stopping the current system and knowing that's not getting any worse, a lot of these other financing options really seem to take a lot more seriousness in their conversation. But a lot of people want to know that we're closing the system, and then we'll be able to have those conversations. But it does open up a lot more avenues if we close the system.
Yeah, thank you for your work.
Mayor.
You bet. Thank you all.
I have a couple. Matter of fact, I probably have all day, because every time I seem to come up with something, I hear it's not legal. You know, and from my standpoint, we have funds that are solvent funds, water, sewer, trash, to put on our water bill, to be able to put a public safety, Nola, are you listening, on our bill, a public safety fee, that we can assess all of our structures in the city of Prescott, to pay for our operations for PSPR, for the daily operations of fire and police. Then we could use the money that we have right now, $30 million plus to pay off our debt to PRPS. So when you want to talk about doing something that would benefit this community, that's one. We wouldn't have to go out and raise taxes. As a chartered city, the state legislature should give us the flexibility to run our system and our city the best financial way that we know how. Second of all, whoever said, and I've talked to a lot of police officers, I was just in San Bernardino this weekend, and the mess they're in right now is just unbelievable. When you start closing down all the libraries and you close down all your parks and recreation and you still have not fixed the system, right, you got a huge problem. So in fixing this system, whoever said, and after talking to several firemen and police officers, whoever said that we had to keep them in the system forever, meaning the point is that when they retire, the fund is being managed up to a point with the matches, with the interest, till the time they retire. At the time they retire, you say, thank you for your service, we appreciate everything you've done, here's a check. Now, invest your check in a new house, in real estate, in a 401k, whatever you want to do. But the state and the city to still be responsible for the next 65 years and onward, I don't think is realistic, and I don't think it's attainable. You guys keep changing the system and thinking that it isn't attainable, but when you have lay people that are in charge of a fund and they make a misstep with these guys' money and our money, and then our taxpayers are held responsible with interest, this is a huge deal. So if you stop this system like closing the border and you stop this system and you start a new system, at what point do our employees, our firemen or policemen, how long do they have to work? One, before they can retire. Two, when they do retire, are they getting paid 50% on the last 3 years of service? And how is all that equated? Because I haven't heard you touch on any of the evaluation on how each employee is looked at being paid based upon their last 3 years of service. Does this new system correct that as well?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there.
So I know there is. There's a lot of questions up here.
Yeah. Let me try to explain how the new system is less expensive for the employer, and then I think that'll provide a broad context, and then I'll follow up on some of the specifics. So think about it under the current system, just as an example. For a new police officer, let's say the town of Prescott would contribute $50,000 a year to PSPRS under the current system. And again, as I alluded to earlier, say $30,000 of that is related to the unfunded liability. So under the new system, that same police officer, your annual contribution is going to be $20,000 a year. So the savings to the town of Prescott as a result of the new system, the day that, or the year that that new officer is hired, is $30,000. So how we get the relationship between the two cities and dealing with closing the old and the new is from a financial perspective of the budget and the policy discussions. The entity would have the ability to redirect that $30,000 directly against the unfunded liability of the existing system. And so that's how we see you're creating a new, and sort of, I hate to use the word stop the bleeding, but that's what a lot of people have said about it under the current system. And then you can redirect as a legislative organization the priority of that $30,000. You might want to do something else with it in your general fund, or you might want to put it back against the unfunded liability. So that's mechanically how you would start saving money as the employer under the new system, again, because you're not dealing with the unfunded liability. The second part of your question talks a lot about the investments and how things have been and really how they should have been. And I think that's as the task force has looked at this, a lot of the reasons for that was the result of the current structure being 256 plans that nobody was really monitoring at an aggregate level. So when we made decisions about to do this or to do that, those decisions would show themselves differently across all 256 plans because they're in different financial conditions. They have different retiree ratios to actives. There's all kinds of stuff like that. And we could really never understand the ramifications of the decisions that we were making, whether we were making good investments or bad investments. You'd see little pieces of that 256 times, but you would never see the aggregate. And so again, from a consolidation standpoint, that's why we're looking at significant changes to governance and the governance structure. And I think the spirit of your question is supportive of what we're trying to do. We really need to completely change that system and make sure that there's one entry point and one thing that everybody is constantly looking at.
So when you start talking to the new hires, because ultimately that's what I'm getting at. I mean, the system we're in now is what it is.
Right.
Based upon a court law and based upon what I swore to uphold as the law sitting up here. The new employees, at what point in time do we start telling the new employees what they can expect as far as how old they have to be when they retire? At what point, you know, is a 50% model based upon 3 years of the last 3 years or the last 2 years, the last 1 year? Have we even addressed that? Because that's part of the ongoing equation in the future. If we're to buy off on a new system, we need to know that to be able to understand, and the employees need to be able to know that to understand what they're working towards.
Yeah, Mike snuck up behind me, and I'll have him answer the specifics. Let me talk a little bit about process. The process that we're going through is getting feedback about the yardstick and sort of getting agreement at a high level that, yes, if you can put the numbers to a system that does this, then we're in supportive of that. And that's the next evolution of what we're going to be doing, is to come back with, okay, here's the numbers, here's when they retire, and all those kind of questions. So we've got to get this process completed, but I'm going to have Mike talk a little bit about generally how we think that system, what that would look like from a numbers perspective.
There's going to be a lot of, I guess, negotiation, give and take. So we wanted to start with really what are we trying to accomplish with the principles and the goals first. When we start getting down to the numbers, and again, what Scott talked about was the structure of this system needs to be designed for success 30, 40, 50 years into the future when we're not around anymore. So it's really the structure that's going to be important, and that's why we talked about some things like the 100% target, also the sharing of contributions. So everybody has a stake in the game and everybody's engaged. So when we start having a conversation about what is this going to look like, we talked about not having a drop, but is it going to be the 2.5% per year of service? Is it the last 3 years, highest 3 years of their average pay? When we start getting into those conversations, it's not just what's that formula and what's that pension going to be. The other side of that is what's the cost? What's the cost that the employers and the taxpayers are going to pay also? So we're not set in stone that this is what the formula is going to be that somebody's going to get when they retire. Because the other side of that is how much is it going to cost and what's everybody willing to pay for, including the new employees that we're going to be hiring. So that's all part of the whole conversation. That's why we can't get down to a specific number right now, because everybody needs to be involved in that conversation. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, when you're in an older community that has an older fire department and retired guys like Prescott does, and a police department with great people involved in it, the bottom line is as you keep paying these retirees, and if they retired at a certain age and now they've got 30 years past the time they retired, and you start saying, has the system been outstripped? Well, your only response can be one, is yes, it's been outstripped. So the bottom question that I have is, when you go forward in the future to make sure we don't outstrip the system, because that's going backwards. But where is it defined, again, as I talked to several firemen and several policemen, that their life expectancy is way different than a lot of other folks that are involved in city business. Therefore, if they retire early, there's a lot of folks that would rather have their pensions with a check written in their hand and let them go do and invest how they want, rather than having the scenario the state of Arizona has painted for them. I'm not sure I'd like that, because I'd rather have that money when I retire, much like you're talking about Social Security. For me to be able to invest it in my own way, I think I'd be further ahead than I am today. But the only safeguard is the taxpayers have had to pick up the loss plus interest to make these guys whole.
Right under the current system. That's
under the current system. And in anybody's right mind, that's not right. So my point is going forward in the new system, that there be some discussion at some point in time to give an out to those public safety employees if they want to have a check written at the time that they retire, so we're not continually carrying these employees and their spouses and everything else on down the road. I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think that's the job of government.
And I think that your comment gets to the point of how all these elements that we talked about are all interrelated. and you need to understand when you don't do something in one place how it affects the other parts of the system. And again, under one system, that's going to be a lot clearer to see than it is under the current system. So appreciate your feedback on that.
Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of in collaboration with my fellow councilman here, thank you very much for your presentation. In no way do I mean to demean all the public servants that you worked with to come up with a plan. Nor do I mean to demean the union for coming up with a plan. But I almost feel as though being an elected person, sort of, as somebody who's here to serve the public and be a watch guard for the taxpayers, it's almost like I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. That's what I just heard. And that may be part of the problem with some of what we're dealing with here. If I'm not mistaken, you told me early on, and you did it very well, and I appreciate it, that everybody that came up with a proposal from the league works for government. Everybody that worked with the union's plan works for the government. That in no way means that I don't like people that work for the government. It just means that the taxpayers don't trust who we are. Now, Mr. McConnell, earlier on in this deal with the budgets, etc., I asked about our reserves. I asked about areas within the reserve structure that we could possibly look at lowering or using or consuming some of our reserve capability to lower our liability and get off the dime on this issue and get rid of this thing sooner than later. And that's still on my mind. And I know we're going to be having another budget session Thursday morning. And you and I have had some discussions with regards to some of the things that are on my mind. And hopefully Thursday morning, some of that will come to light and we'll be able to move on down the road a little bit and not be looking at 22 years and an extra $100 million. There's got to be areas within the financial capability of the city of Prescott that we can look at differently than what we've looked at, besides just saying we got to raise our sales tax. And thank you very much.
Chris?
Yeah, I just, we've heard the task force has a plan. Sounds like labor has a plan. What do the investment and money guys at PSPRS say? Do they like part of one and part of another? Have they come up with a plan themselves? Because when we saw a presentation from them down at a league seminar, I think, and they seemed like they had hired some pretty brilliant guys for some pretty brilliant bucks. Are they coming up with a solution?
Mayor, council member, no, the PSPRS administration has not coming up, and not, to my knowledge, does not have any intention of developing a plan or any particular thoughts on this. As administrators, that's exactly how they see themselves, is whatever is decided. Their role is to administer it, not necessarily to create or modify the existing system.
Okay. Jane?
I think you're looking for feedback. And
good feedback, yes.
Yeah. I really want to thank you for all the work that you put in, Mike, Scott, and everyone on your task force. I know this is a lot of work, takes time away from your regular jobs, and thank your employers as well. I think it's to your credit that you are public employees because you understand the value of a defined benefit plan. And that's what the people of Arizona decided years ago in enacting the Constitution, that our public employees deserve a defined pension plan. And what you've set out here is a defined pension plan of a different nature. And I think it's a great idea. It's a big step forward for the future. I'm very supportive of it. I think that when you're a public employee, you don't have time to understand the stock market and understand investments. You're supposed to be dedicated to your job. You're supposed to be serving the public. And yes, you could pay an investment advisor to handle all that for you, but that's money out of your pocket too. It's far better to have a pension system that provides a secure retirement income for public employees who devote their careers to serving the public. That's my point of view, and I know there are people who disagree with that, but I think having a defined pension plan is something we've got to have in the state of Arizona for public employees.
Charlie?
Mayor, thank you, and thank you both for taking the time. I share the same sentiments, and as Jim said, none of my comments are to demean the efforts that you all have put forward, and understanding that this is a measurement tool, a yardstick, to evaluate other proposals with as well. My personal belief is that with 32,000 people in the existing retirement plan, and even if we created a new one next year, you've got 60 plus years of problems, and what we're doing is moving the unfunded liability from one sheet in the budget to another one and saying to each municipality, you got to go deal with it. For those 32,000 employees in the next 60 years, we're still going to be paying the unfunded liabilities. We're still going to be paying what is actually a relatively reasonable contribution rate today into those areas. It doesn't fix our $70 million problem at the city of Prescott. And ultimately, I think there's some aspects of the plan that are important, but looking at those 32,000 employees and the 60 plus years that fund would still have to be around, would that move into management under the new fund, or would that continue to be its own entity operating?
A good question. We believe that the existing system would stay as it is, so it would unwind. You'd have the local boards. All of that would need to exist until that plan actually became extinct.
And I think a big aspect, especially knowing how crazy it can be down at the legislature during a session, I think for anything to garner support, it's going to require that the existing system be addressed. Now, understanding that there's the pension clause and the contract clause that says we can't change the benefit structure, but certainly can come in and make modifications to the way that the Board of Trustees is set up, also the funding policies, adjusting the way that the design is done. I mean, they're so adverse to risk right now in the risk or in this pool that it makes a lot of challenges. There's no doubt about it. I think there's some things in here that are beneficial and should be looked at, and maybe going to a new program completely is great. But I think there's a lot of work to do between now and before that decision can be made. And again, it's been staff driven, and it hasn't gotten into the hands of the legislature yet. And God only knows what can happen at the state when that happens. No. So my whole thought process at this point is I appreciate the proposal. I think there's a lot of work still to be done. And as a stakeholder, as an elected official, you'll be hearing from me going forward about some thoughts on some of this.
And that's part of the reason we're out here, so we appreciate that feedback, and it is transitioning to the political world and that, and we understand that. And I think part of this discussion is to hear your perspectives on this and share your observations. And we believe, as I alluded to in one of the earlier comments, that there are a lot of tools that we're still able to employ to address the unfunded liability of the current system. Once we agree that we're going to close the current system, I think it just gets looked at in a completely different light. And I think there would be more financial relief to the cities and towns and the members sooner rather than later. But we've got to work our way through that and bring forth some tangible results. I understand that.
And an outcome. I mean, it's been discussed, the idea of pension obligation bonds, which may be a very cost-effective way to aggressively address some of these challenges. Not currently allowed under the law, something that needs to be considered as an option for cities and towns. But that unfunded liability, even if we go into something brand new, we still have to deal with the problem. And even with the new employee, we're not paying the unfunded liability contribution rate. For all of our existing employees, we will be until they're no longer in the service of the city of Prescott. Correct. So this is a 25-year benefit, and it's a 26 to 65-year outcome.
Right.
So there's a lot of advantages, I'm sure, but we need to quantify those more.
Yeah. And a lot of that, again, is the result of what we have seen in terms of legal cases, and what we foresee is we really think that that's where that closing and the new system really stem from is the avoidance of litigation and the impairment of benefits to the existing retirees and beneficiaries, which has been decided that way across the country for a myriad of reasons.
And the courts, in all honesty, have leaned more towards the employees than the employer in every one of those cases. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not going to argue that, but the past has proven that.
Right, and I think a comment was made earlier about we also need to weigh that against sort of the risk and the cost of tying this up again for another 5 or 10 years, because essentially, as I alluded to earlier, that's what's going to happen from the 2011 reform. By the time the Hall case gets adjudicated, it could be literally 5 years from 2011, and we've all been in this back and forth mode, and really no progress has been made on this issue. So from the task force perspective, we'd hate to see that be another 5 or 10 years. So again, trying to steer clear of those legal issues.
And just to make sure that if this were to be the path to go, that the safeguards are there to prevent the system from getting as screwed up as we currently are.
Yeah, I will tell you from my perspective on the task force, as well as I think I speak for a great majority of the members, we didn't think, I think when you start any kind of project or assignment, you have some sense of where you think you'll land. I can tell you personally, I didn't think we'd be making the recommendations about governance when I started this. And I think it says two things. One, it says that we went in there with open minds and open eyes, and we were looking at everything, and wherever the data and information took us is where we went. But that's a hard part about this process, because we all have some responsibility for the current system. And so by admitting that, we all sort of are admitting that maybe we all could have done our jobs a little bit better and try to avoid this. And I think it goes to another point, which is, and it's really hard to do, but you have to be able to separate the system from the performance of the system. So you can have a good system or a good structure, but because of the way it's been managed or performed, it makes the system look flawed. And we've been real critical in that analysis, and that's how we came to the conclusions about governance. Is we believe a defined benefit plan is the best way for the taxpayers to finance a pension for a public safety employee. How we've done that in this state needs to be changed through a different governance model. And in fact, I'll be talking to the PSPRS board tomorrow about these recommendations, and I imagine we're going to spend most of our time on the governance element of our recommendations, and I would expect some pretty honest and critical feedback from them. But again, that's part of what we're out here doing. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
We've still got more. Jim?
Thank you. Again, thank you for your comments, especially about that last part that you were just talking about. In no way do I mean to infer that I don't believe in defined benefits for police, fire, the cops, the military, whatever you want to talk about. They earn it. As do the guys in the bottom of the sewer, so you're comfortable every day, or out delivering your water so you're comfortable every day. They earn the contract. They do. Okay? I also realize you're talking about a transition, or we're transitioning. And the state of Arizona, statewide, is transitioning. And I appreciate that. I would hope in this process of evolution that you embrace people on the board that are from the private sector who are not working for the government, but in no way am I inferring that you who do work for the government, and thank you very much, are not taxpayers too. However, those that work for the government have a different relationship with their paycheck than those that produce widgets. And it would just be my suggestion that at some point during the league, you guys serve a whole lot of different people than just government. Even though it's the League of Cities and Towns, there's a whole bunch of people that make up the cities and towns, and it includes business people. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Steve?
Real quick, and I do believe in a defined benefit plan, Gene. That's why I ask a very specific question. The new model moving forward. We have an academy here called NARTA. We have a lot of new employees that come in. We spend a lot of money as the city of Prescott training police officers and firemen. They want to know, moving forward with the new plan, what they can expect. You haven't given me any defined answers about what they can expect, so I would assume as you roll this out, you'll be coming back forward or state some of the questions that I asked that I didn't feel were fully answered about what they can expect with their new defined pension plan.
Sure, in terms of, we heard that in terms of the numbers, absolutely. As this evolves, I think that's the next evolution, is you'll see what's the contribution amounts, what are the pension amounts, how are they going to be escalated, those sort of details that everybody migrates to. But we first, again, are trying to get feedback that, yeah, this is the system that we could support, and then fill in the details that support that, and then move that product through the legislative process. So you're at that level where everybody we've spoken to at the end of the presentation says, I want to see the numbers. I like what you've said. Show me the numbers. And that's great feedback for us. Means we're on the right track, but we've got to pause and make sure that everybody thinks we're on the right track.
And then again, just one last thing. I understand defined benefit, but when the guys retire, no matter what age they are, that's a benefit they've accrued out through the whole process. They've accumulated all this money, however much it might be. At some point in time, what if they wanted all that money when they retire? Is there a plan for giving them that money? Or does the state, through this benefit plan, defined benefit plan, have to manage this plan until it's exhausted? To me, again, I don't think the state's in the business to manage after they've retired, after they've done their share, after the cities match their share. If they determine they want their money, why don't we give them their money? I'd like that question answered too.
Yeah, we heard that question.
Okay, two knowns is that every employee of the city through the last day of June next year would be on the old plan.
Everybody who started, yes.
And everybody that went to work for the city July 1st and after would be on a new plan.
As long as they weren't in the system before. Okay. So if they transferred in from another department, then they'd still be under the old system. They'd have to be new to the profession.
Okay. And the one thing that's absolute is we owe the money.
As hard as that is for everybody to understand, we owe the money that Mark and your staff has been telling you and that you've been making decisions around. Yes.
Thanks for being here.
You bet. You appreciate the dialogue, the feedback, and the thank yous, because it's been a lot of work for a lot of folks. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Item 3B, approval of the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System PSPRS employer rate for fiscal year 2016.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This we talked about earlier, which was the phase-in rate compared to the non-phase-in rate for a PSPRS employer rate for next year. As we discussed earlier with the findings in the Fields case, the PSPRS board decided to offer the 3-year phase-in rate to phase in this higher rate. We've built the budget around the lower rate as we look to the election in August on the PSPRS tax. If the election is successful and the tax goes into effect, we'll easily make up any additional cost associated with paying the lower rate in the first year. And the proposal is, if the election does not pass and the citizens clearly state from that they would prefer to see a cut in services as opposed to the additional tax, through the 16 budget year, fiscal year, we will be looking at the different cuts that will need to be implemented and will be implemented in the spring of the year to get ready for the 17 budget year, the fiscal year, at which time we would recommend to go to the full rate to achieve the payoff within the 22 or 21 years at that point, a cycle for the PSPRS unfunded liability. So this item before you today is to get your agreement for you to approve the phase-in rate for the fiscal 16 employer rate, and then depending on the outcome of the election and through the 17 budget preparation process in the spring of the year, we will be making the proposals and discussion on the cuts and various things to go to the higher rate if the election does not pass.
So you've got some flexibility.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Council?
Mayor, just one thing. Mark, I appreciate the explanation. Understanding from the upcoming fiscal year budget, if we don't do the phase-in, then we are talking about immediate service level cuts.
Right, yes. $911,000 cuts in the general fund would have to be achieved in the current year.
When this came up before really all the education about what's going on with PSPRS came to be, I was adamantly opposed to doing the phase-in because it only adds to the long-term liability. But understanding that situation, I'm going to vote in favor of this today because I think it's reasonable for the next fiscal year budget. But I will tell you that certainly I don't think next year is going to be real easy if the sales tax measure fails. So that's where I'm at.
It's a very accurate statement, Councilman.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to what Charlie was saying with regards to the 3-year phase-in, my question says 2 years from today or a year and a half from the day or maybe 7 months from the day, we can revisit this issue with a different approach to the fiscal budget for the following 6 months that might include looking at our reserve package or our reserves or the cuts or whatever the case would be. Am I correct?
Well, yes, Councilman. As you know, last budget workshop we had 2 weeks ago, we did look at the general fund reserves and talk about those. We'll be looking at fund balances and reserves this Thursday. And, you know, that's always part of the budget process, and that'll be part of the 17 budget process as we look at the results of the election.
Thank you for your answer.
Anyone else? Comments from the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mayor, move to approve the 3-year employer phase-in rate for the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, PSPRS, for fiscal year 2016.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please. There you go, Charlie.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. When you're ready, C.
Item 3C, adoption of ordinance number 4940-1478, approving and authorizing lease agreement number 57-8371-15-002 between the City of Prescott and the United States government on behalf of the United States Forest Service for city property located at 2400 Melville Road, city contract number 2015-190. Ordinance number 4940-1478, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, approving and authorizing land lease number 57-8371-15-002, city contract number 2015-190 between the City of Prescott and the United States Forest Service.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. This year's about the lease that we're going to have with the U.S. Forest Service. Currently, there is a lease in place, and we're looking to do a new lease, some new terms and conditions. Give you a little bit of background on it. In 1989, the city entered into a lease agreement whereby the United States Forest Service leased approximately 16.4 acres of City of Prescott-owned property located at Ernest Love Field for the Forest Service air operations area. In the years 1991 through 1994, the Forest Service constructed new facilities at the lease site to support its aerial fire suppression operations at a cost of $3.7 million. From 2001 through 2014, the service expenditures for maintenance and improvements to the leasehold property totaled just a little over $1 million. Forest Service is currently working with Dibble Engineering and airport staff on expansion and reconstruction project for the current facilities valued at $1.2 million. Additional lease area facility improvements planned and funded by the U.S. Forest Service during the 20-year term of the new lease are expected to be approximately $2 million. The boundaries of the lease ground will change slightly from the original area to allow for the expansion and reconstruction of the premises, and that is shown on this exhibit that I have on the screen right now. The new lease area will be the area in yellow, and the current is the area in green. In order for the Forest Service to move forward with the expansion project, they have approached the city with a new 20-year lease land agreement for the commencement date of June 1st, 2015. Financial impact as far as the city goes on this, the rental rate for the new lease is based on an appraisal completed by Harding & Associates in January 2015. The current lease rate is $1,773.33 per year. The Forest Service made a one-time lump sum payment of $53,200 to pay for the entire 30-year original lease now being replaced. The new lease rate is $40,454.80 per year. Over the 20-year life of the lease, the rental payments will total $809,096.03. In addition to the lease rate, the U.S. Forest Service also pays the city for landing and overnight storage fees of aircraft. These fees total $66,983 from 2009 through present. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Charlie.
Mayor, thank you. And this is just more of a statement thanking staff and especially thanking the National Forest Service for their efforts to expand their operations at our airport. It's very much appreciated, and glad to see a long-term agreement in place.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, just looking at that, with the new lease rate being $40,000 a year, the last one was under $2,000. We're not going to scare the Forest Service out of this place, are we?
No, we actually negotiated between staff and the U.S. government negotiators for their lease for that amount.
Good job.
And
thanks.
they are agreeable to that.
Quick question. We're removing some of their leased land out at the taxiway, the center of the taxiway back. The maintenance, we had to do the maintenance anyway, so there's no effect on who will be doing the maintenance of that relinquished property.
Correct, Mayor.
That's a yes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Chris, you got your?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any comments from the public? Okay, do you have a motion?
Move to adopt ordinance number 4940-1478.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Item D.
Item 3D, award of city contract number 2015-185 to Lion Engineering for engineering services for the Bashford Court Alley reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $87,423.
Thank you. I'd like to just offer a few initial comments before we get into this item that is relative to the several of the following items on the agenda. The Public Works Department functions under the goals and objectives set by the City Council as we develop our 5-year capital improvement program. As part of that program, we look at delivering projects over the next 5 years that meet those goals and objectives. The next several projects fall into that program, mainly in the area of pavement maintenance and preservation. Now, the following projects, which we'll discuss individually, are for design services, for major reconstruction projects programmed over the next 2 years. The construction of those projects still need to come back before the council and are dependent on funding and your direction in the future. The first item we have before us right now is with Lion Engineering for the Bashford Court Alley reconstruction. This project includes improvements to the alley, both sewer improvements as well as some drainage improvements. There has been a history of some ice formation due to lack of drainage improvements in the area. This project will be addressing those issues. We went through a procurement process whereby we put out a list of design projects over the next couple of years to the consultant community, and Lion Engineering was the successful consultant on this project. The design fee for this project is about 11.9%, which is a little bit above the average. We did look at the average for the design projects over the past fiscal year. The average for all of the projects combined is about 9.4%. So it does vary, but it is targeting around that 10% rule of thumb. If you have any questions about this contract, I'll be glad to answer them.
I just have one, Mayor, if you would, please. I've been around long enough to see that alley for years, from pavement replacement to pavement replacement to valley gutters put in the middle to move the water to having it, again, bust up. I understand underground utilities are needed, but in this valuation with the engineering, is it going to evaluate the difference between concrete and asphalt? Because I know I would prefer concrete over asphalt, knowing what the salt and the additives that are in it would do, and knowing that that whole building back behind doesn't get any sun in the wintertime, and it's a sheet of ice when it's cold weather most of the time, that I think concrete would stand up better. So I'd ask if that evaluation is going to take place during the engineering phase.
The pavement surface selection will be part of that, yes.
Thank you.
Charlie.
Mayor, thank you, and I'm definitely glad to see this project coming up. It's been something that the city's wanted to do for a while. As far as utility relocation, APS has a significant infrastructure back there. Has there been any conversation with them, or will that be part of this process to identify upgrading their infrastructure and relocating it underground potentially?
As with all of our capital improvement programs, projects, utility coordination with APS, Unisource, Cable One, CenturyLink are all part of these projects. And it would be up to the utility to do the relocations or program the improvements, understanding that we do have a no-cut pavement moratorium for 5 years. So if there's improvements that are planned, they can be incorporated into the project design.
Okay, and the only other thing that I see is we're anticipating design completion in December, figuring you've got a 60 to 90 day window after that to do bids and then council, and I just want to make sure you guys don't schedule the construction for summertime.
Whereas with a lot of our projects, we do have a window of time that we do not want to be downtown.
Okay.
Because of the significant tourism that occurs during that window of time.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You answered most of my questions in your introduction. But I was looking through it. I couldn't find, is this coming out of the streets budget?
This is streets and open space funding, yes.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. I think I've been here twice when that alley was been redone. And each time, this is the last time we'll ever have to do it, because we're going to do it right this time.
Yes, we are.
And we're right back there again. But it seems like one thing that has always been missing is a method to get the water off the buildings. Mm-hmm. It all has to come down off the back. And it's always allowed to come out and run as a sheet across the alley. I would hope this time that there's some way of getting some underground distribution of the water off the backs of the buildings, because that situation develops down the entire alley. So.
That is the second major part of this project, is not only the pavement surface, but getting the drainage off the surface.
Okay. Anyone in the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mayor, move to award city contract number 2015-185 with Lion Engineering for engineering services for Bashford Court Alley reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $87,423.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please. Okay.
Greg.
Councilman Lozelle? Passes unanimously.
Item E.
Item 3E, award of city contract number 2015-186 to Civil Tech Engineering Incorporated for engineering services for the North Washington Avenue Churchill Street reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $75,350.
Thank you. As we spoke previously on the previous item, this is another one of the pavement maintenance reconstruction projects for North Washington Churchill Streets. The design includes curb, gutter, sidewalk improvements, and drainage improvements as well. It does include all of those elements. We went through the same procurement process, with Civil Tech Engineering being the most qualified for this project, and their design fee is about 6.5% of the estimated construction cost. So this is well within that range. It is a fairly straightforward project, and the funding is from the Streets and Open Space Fund. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Council? Comments from the public? Seeing none, motion.
Mayor, move to award city contract number 2015-186 to Civil Tech Engineering for engineering services for North Washington Avenue / Churchill Street reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $75,350.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Item F.
Item 3F, award of city contract number 2015-187 to Lion Engineering for engineering services for the Shimmer Drive pavement reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $130,631.
Thank you. This project is for portions of Shimmer Drive. The pavement, again, needs to rehabilitation, and this project does include some water line improvements along Shimmer to address some deficiencies. As with a lot of the projects, we are going to be looking at drainage improvements. There are some existing drainage issues in the area that we'll be addressing with this project. The engineer's design cost is 9.3% of the estimated construction cost, and the project funding is from the Streets and Open Space Fund and also the Water Fund. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay. Question? No? Public? Seeing none, motion?
Mayor, I move to award city contract number 2015-187 to Line Engineering for engineering services for the Shimmer Drive pavement reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $130,631.
Second.
Motion made and then seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
G.
Item 3G, award of city contract number 2015-188 to Kelly Wise Engineering Incorporated to provide engineering services for the Summit Avenue, McCormick Street, and Beach Avenue pavement and utility improvements project in an amount not to exceed $178,028.
Thank you. Again, this project is focusing more on the downtown area. There are some concrete streets that need to be upgraded. We are looking at improving the sidewalks, and again, looking at any drainage improvements that are needed. Water and sewer line improvements are also being upsized to meet our current standards in this area. The engineering design fee is about 10.2% of the estimated construction cost, and the funding is scheduled to come from the Streets and Open Space Fund, the Water and Wastewater Funds. If there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer those.
Questions, Council?
Yep. Mayor, thank you.
Okay.
Summit being a concrete street like a large portion of Park Avenue was, are we anticipating any extra costs related to rehabilitating that street? And our subsoil evaluation, have we identified any granite or blue granite?
We will be looking at those elements as part of the design. There's a significant element for potholing and geotechnical evaluations to see what is underneath there specifically, and we will be looking at the whether it's granite, blue granite, regular granite, or other
Wonderful.
materials.
And then the follow-up question to that is part of the scope of work. I assume one of the studies will include a look at traffic control in those areas?
Yes.
Okay. As part of that scope, I'd like for them to take a look at the non-lit pedestrian crossing at the intersection of Summit and Gurley. That's becoming more heavily used, and when it was initially put in, it was done in a cost savings mode, not to include lights or a device to activate it, but it is getting a ton of use now, and figure it's right there at that intersection.
We can
definitely want to do a four-way stop?
No.
If you find something other than antiquities or something, would you let me know?
Yes, we will.
Thanks.
Questions, Council?
No, but just to back up what Charlie's saying, because we brought this up a few times before, where being as it's a mid-street crossing, we have the signage up there, but and sometimes it seems like the people that use this crosswalk aren't completely in their complete faculties, you know. No, it's true. Not trying to make a joke, but you know, they if we hit somebody in there, it could be real bad. If there was a button to push, that at least that light would. I've seen it before. They're surrounded with yellow LEDs, like Charlie's talking about. If we could have that, I think it would have a higher awareness of someone crossing that road there, because it is kind of a busy place.
We will have our traffic engineer and the consultant evaluate that as part of the project.
Thank you.
Questions from the public? Do you have a motion?
Mayor, move to award city contract number 2015-188 to Kelly Wise Engineering Incorporated to provide engineering services for Summit Avenue, McCormick Street, and Beach Avenue pavement and utility improvement project in an amount not to exceed $178,028.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Go to H.
Item 3H, award of city contract number 2015-189 to Shepherd Westnitzer Incorporated to provide engineering services for the South Washington Avenue East Goodwin Street Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $257,554.
Thank you. This is the design contract for those streets. These services do include curb and gutter improvements where there is none right now, to better accommodate bikes and pedestrians because there is a school and there's a lot of school-age pedestrians in the area. Again, we'll be looking at some drainage improvements because of the topography in the area. There is some water improvements scheduled with this project based on our water model. The total design fee is about 8.2% of the estimated construction cost, and the funding will be coming from the Streets and Open Space Fund, the water and wastewater funds. Again, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Council. Charlie.
Mayor, more of a comment. I would like to thank staff. About a year and a half ago, we were doing a drive around looking at some maintenance projects, and we came upon South Washington and realized how terrible a shape it was in, including Goodwin Street, and had a discussion, and staff has diligently looked at that issue, and I'm very appreciative of it. I think this will be a good improvement to a portion of town that is in dire need of it.
Jean.
Thanks, Mayor. The project area is in the historic district, and there are an additional 2 blocks east of the project area on Goodwin Street that are also in the historic district. They're concrete surface, crumbling. I walk and drive on that road quite a bit, so I'm very familiar with it. I would really like to see the project area expanded to include those additional 2 blocks from Washington east to Penn Street so that all of this historic area can be upgraded at the same time. And secondly, because I walk this route so frequently, I've noticed many times that there are groups of elementary school children walking along Goodwin Street from, I think it is Skyview School, down Goodwin and to the library and back. And they're well supervised, and it's great. But I think it could be made a lot safer if there were a sidewalk put on at least the north side or one side of the street. I'd like to see that included in the scope of the project, as well as those two additional blocks.
I can address the second half of your question first. There is sidewalk incorporated into the design right now for that very purpose. As far as possibly expanding the project to include the other 2 blocks, what we're looking at is we do have a cohesive program to evaluate the pavement across the city. Those 2 blocks, while they may not be in perfect condition, there are other areas that are in worse shape. And if we do move money to that area, we'll be taking away from funding of streets that are in worse shape, understanding that there is a historic district and it doesn't make sense to address an area at the same time. However, we're just trying to be cognizant of the funding, and we only have so many dollars to spend on pavement improvement projects. So it's at the will of the council.
I understand. I think it just makes sense to include it in this project since you're focusing on that area. And it also doesn't address the lack of a sidewalk for those 2 blocks, which is also where the kids walk, because they come up from Rush Street and then turn the corner onto Goodwin.
May I interject just a thought real quickly? If it was determined, say in 30 days, that it was a desire to add that to the scope, an amendment could be done to the contract?
Absolutely.
Number 2, Gene, you brought up a good point. Because of the connectivity from the school to the library, I think it might be worth reaching out to the Safe Routes to School folks and see if maybe there's some construction funding that could be available that could offset that cost. Something that might address everything in a roundabout way.
You're thinking of the sidewalk only?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, if we could offset that, and I don't know what the numbers would look like, but something we could look at.
Mark, you got money? No? Sorry.
Or CBD.
And I had one more question about why we need an endangered species letter on this project. I didn't see it as included in the other projects that you're bringing to the council.
Very good observation. When we work with various funding sources, whether it's CDBG or other federal funded projects or partially funded projects, there's always a mandatory need to do an environmental assessment of those areas. On this project, since part of the project is going up into the improved slightly area in Acker Park at the south end of Washington, that's the access road to the Zone 0 water facilities. We chose to err on the side of conservancy and have that included in our project in the undisturbed areas. It's not looking at areas that are already disturbed. It's just in that upper area that's not paved right now.
What would happen if the consultant does find an endangered species?
Then we would have to address it in the project design.
You kill them and hide them.
He didn't really say that. Okay.
Any comments from the public? After that one, I'm sure there'll be some. But do you have a comment? Oh, I thought it was you. Okay, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I do have a comment, Mayor. Steve, with respect to considering expanding the project, do you see any significant problem with bringing this back if it's the council's direction to expand the project for those additional 2 blocks? I would prefer to see the entire contract rather than awarding it now in an amendment if there is no particular time urgency. What is your sense of that?
The time urgency, this is the payment program for the next 2 years. It would be cleaner for the consultant to have one scope of work and one fee for the council to review. It's just a matter of the overall funding for the project.
Could we bring it back? And of course, we're talking about negotiating, but 30 to 60 days, would that be a significant delay?
No, it would not. We could do that.
Gene, you want to table this one?
Well, I think that in that eventuality, if the council is interested in expanding it, getting that work done in that historic area, being done with it, having one contract that we know, without amending it, time apparently is not critical. So if it's the council's interest in adding that 2-block section, then our suggestion would be to take no action today, and we will bring it back at a future date.
Just literally.
Mayor, my only comment there would be, I think my support for expanding the scope would be contingent upon finding a funding source to at least offset a portion of the cost.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have a question on that too. Now that you did that, along with what Charlie says, there's no guarantee that any of the tax proposals that we're going to be in the middle of in August are going to pass. Therefore, the idea of potentially expanding the scope of this project hasn't been contemplated beyond what we had in the budgeted amount in the capital improvements or in the street funds for the fiscal year 15 or 16. So now all of a sudden we would be pushing this out, and we haven't contemplated any sort of difference in what you've just made. Am I correct in that, Steve?
Well, let me respond to that, Councilman. As Mr. Rose has said, that if there are 2 blocks added, it is going to displace other work. And if we are talking about trying to offset some of the money with Safe Routes to School, which is a federal program through CYMPO, then we're talking about a substantial delay, because that is not in the Transportation Improvement Program of CYMPO, which they are basically taking action on now. So that would indefinitely defer it.
Yeah. But that would get us through design and some time to consider that potentially before we have to award a construction contract.
we're going to be going into another fiscal year also. Does that have any effect on it?
I don't believe so, Mayor. The money is just, for projects, spans different fiscal years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the choice, to let it hang or take some action?
Would it be reasonable to assume that through our SIMPO contact and a few of the folks that we work with on Safe Routes to School, that we could entertain that in the next 30 days, come back with a response and either expand it or not?
I could surely bring it up.
I'm always for holding off on spending money.
Then under that scenario, what we could certainly do is just take no action today. We will talk to Seaway MPO about the potential for augmented funding and what time frame that would look like, and then bring back to you some let's say, more full information which should address the items brought up today.
Okay. Let the record reflect no action taken today on item H. Okay. Let's move on to I.
Item 3I, award of city contract number 2015-194 to Earth Resources Corporation for construction of the Lakeview Storm Drain Project in the amount of $215,323.
Thank you. This project is actually a construction project that will be constructed here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. This is for 420 lineal feet of storm drain from the end of the system that was constructed with the Lakeview Plaza development and connecting to the creek. This, the design for this project was done in-house by city staff. The Lakeview Plaza project designed and constructed a drainage system that met our 25-year design requirements. That project also included stormwater sediment control and water quality controls into that system for the water getting into the storm drain system. This project is adding some additional capacity to the storm drain system beyond what we would require in our standards due to the recent multiple year events that we've experienced out there, where the stormwater flow has been higher than the 25-year events. The project was publicly bid with 5 contractors providing bids for the project. Earth Resources Corporation was the apparent low bidder. Their bonding and other references and stuff checked out, and the bid was deemed responsive and balanced. The engineer's cost estimate was just above $289,000. The low bid came in at $215,000. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. The funding for this project is from the Streets and Open Space Fund.
Chris.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Since we're entertaining goofy council ideas, this is picking up all the runoff of the new plaza, and it's a 48-inch pipe, and it goes pretty much directly into Willow Lake. Is there anything on there to catch the oils that come off the asphalt or the trash and debris that would come off that asphalt? Because there's a Mickey Ronald's there, so wrappers are going out the window and stuff like that. Is there any way to keep it from further polluting the lakes that we're going to have to clean up anyway?
Very good comment. The Lakeview Plaza development that consists today of the CVS and McDonald's projects were required to install some devices called storm scepters, which is basically a grease filter and sediment filter. Those elements are installed in the system at the source of where the waters would come into the storm drain system. The Lakeview Plaza project did construct some storm drain system. This is basically a 4th pipe that takes the additional capacity that we've seen out there from what Mother Nature has dumped in the area in terms of rainwater. So this system is already taking the flow that's been filtered from Lakeview Plaza. The upstream of the Lakeview Plaza is a natural channel, so that's already there. So anything that's man-made is already getting filtered through the Lakeview Plaza system. Also, the purpose of this system is to reduce the inundation of the Willow Creek Road intersection with Willow Lake. that has been inundated with water, that during the summer is just significant water on the road, but during the winter, when we do have some winter events, would reduce the amount of ice and other frozen water that's out there.
Looks like you already addressed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you raised a question that I was going to ask as well. What kind of filtering mechanisms are there going to be? And you said there are storm scepters.
Correct.
That the developer of Lakeview Plaza is being required to install.
He has installed for the developed areas. The other elements of the storm drain system that have been installed do have some other sediment filters where there exist in the unimproved areas of Lakeview Plaza.
I'm just puzzled why this wasn't anticipated during the design review of the Lakeview Plaza development.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the city has a design criteria for drainage events to be designed to what we call a 25-year storm event, which is what Lakeview Plaza was required to do. Based on our experience in the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen an unusual amount of additional water that's been received in that area, and that the additional pipe with the partnership of the plaza is being installed by the city at this time. So this is going over and beyond what our requirements for a private development to mitigate. Okay, and then further down, after the water is channeled underneath Willow Lake Road, Councilman Kuknio asked whether this water is just dumped into Willow Lake, but you said it's pre-filtered. I still think that there are going to be a lot of sediments and pollutants that make their way into Willow Lake, and this is a great area to do one of those projects like Prescott Creeks has done across from the hospital, where you have a natural retention basin built with vegetation that absorbs and further filters the water. I would really like to be part of this project, some kind of filtration, natural filtration system. If we could incorporate the work of Prescott Creeks and their volunteers, I think it would be a really good project.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Public? You have a motion?
Mayor, move to award city contract number 2015-194 to Earth Resources Corporation for construction of the Lakeview Storm Drain Project in the amount of $215,323.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes 5-1. Councilwoman Wilcox dissenting. Mayor Pro Tem Kuknio absent excused.
Okay.
Item 3J, award of city contract number 2015-184 to AMEC Foster Wheeler for the Upper Granite Creek Watershed and Watson Lake TMDLs and Stormwater Quality Monitoring Plan in amount not to exceed $117,500.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The next item for your consideration is a professional services agreement with AMEC Foster Wheeler for technical and professional support services connected to compliance with Arizona Environmental Quality, or ADQ. The professional services agreement is broken into 3 tasks or deliverables. The first task will provide technical support related to the appeal of the Watson Lake TMDL and subsequent next steps. Appealing the Watson Lake TMDL was approved by Council on April 14th. This contract will provide the city with highly technical resources and experts as we move through the appeals process related to the Watson Lake TMDL. Task 1 also includes the development of an action plan that will define all the necessary future tasks and components to develop a required lake management plan. Once the action plan is finalized, staff and AMEC will present the results and findings to Council. The second task is comprised of a technical review of ADQ's final Upper Granite Creek Watershed E. coli TMDL report. ADQ released the draft report on December 2014. City staff and AMEC reviewed the document and submitted formal comments. We're expecting a formal notice from ADQ before June of 2015. As with Task 1, AMIC will prepare an action plan for the Upper Granite Creek watershed, and once it's been finalized, staff and AMIC will present the results and findings to Council. The third task for AMIC is to prepare a stormwater quality monitoring plan that is required for compliance with ADQ's new municipal storm sewer MS4 general permit, set to be issued in July of 2015. The main components of this task will be data collection, outfall sub-basin evaluation, and monitoring plan development. As part of the MS4 permit, the city will be required to develop a monitoring plan and begin to monitor stormwater discharges to impaired water bodies. Monitoring data will be submitted to ADQ as part of the MS4 annual reporting and will be used to determine compliance with the TMDLs. Tasks 4 and 5 are future tasks that will be quantified once AMIC provides city with an action plan for the Watson Lake and Upper Granite Creek watershed that I spoke for Task 1 and 2. These future tasks will build off Tasks 1 and 3 and will evaluate the performance and effectiveness of potential management and pollution reduction strategies so that the city can make well-informed decisions. All the tasks and deliverables will be completed within 12 months. We're proposing a contract award on May 27th and a kickoff meeting sometime during the first week of June. There is funding available through streets and open space. And with that said, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. In addition, I have Amanda Richardson here, the city's environmental specialist, Dr. Latimer with AMIC, and Mr. Ben Burns with the Capital Improvement Program as well.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question was, couldn't we use this out of that new fund that we just put on the sewer bill? The 70 cents?
Yes, some of it, sure.
Okay. My other comment is, and to kind of lead on to something that Councilwoman Wilcox brought up, in this engineering report and after all the testing is done, will other ideas be brought to us that may be not mainstream, but some alternative things that are tried and true, like the Hershey Corporation is doing in Nevada to clean up their water? I'm not just looking for a chlorinated, sewage plant that cleans this up. If that's what it comes down to, we'll look at other methods.
That's a very good question. And with that, Amanda, would you like to address?
Good afternoon. I'll do my best to answer that question. It's a little early to tell what kinds of options we may be evaluating, but I hope that we will be able to take advantage of current and technologies as well as some new technologies that are arising. I think we have to look at large and small solutions at all different locations in the watershed in addition to lake-specific issues. But what we are trying to accomplish with this contract will be the building block for us to be able to make those evaluations and compare performance and cost, and so that we can have a reasonable plan moving forward. Because I know everyone wants to know what can we do, and we have been able, we've only been able to say we're not there yet. And
because there are,
yeah.
if the tests come back and lean to something that the city has to mitigate, there are all alternatives there that are far less costly also, and more effective than traditional cleanup methods.
Well, we will take everything into consideration.
Jane.
Thanks, Mayor. My objection to this item is that it's using the wrong source of funding. This project is about cleaning up the water. It's not about open space. It's not about streets. We should be using the water fund or the aquifer protection fund, whatever we ended up calling it. And I don't understand why we're not coordinating with the Watershed Improvement Commission on this, which is currently, I know, Amanda, you've been going to those meetings, working on a monitoring plan. Why does the city have to bear the burden of hiring a consultant to do our part, and a part that we share with other entities that control land over which water flows and pollutants pick up and pollute the watershed as well.
The city's stormwater program traditionally has been funded out of the Streets and Open Space Fund. I believe, and someone, maybe Craig, can correct me if I'm wrong, but our streets are primary drainage facilities in the community. So I believe that's the connection there. As for why the city is specifically required to develop a monitoring plan and begin monitoring, it's because the city's storm sewer system is permitted under the Arizona Pollutant Discharge Elimination System General Permit. So we're considered a point source. ADOT is also a permit holder, as is Yavapai County, but other stakeholders in the watershed, like the Forest Service, the tribe, they are not a permitted entity, and so those things are treated differently in the regulations. So under compliance, well, under our permit, the city is required to do this, and we need to understand what the city's contribution to the water quality issues is specifically, so that we can try to understand what is coming into from upstream of the city's boundaries. And then we can look at trying to mitigate what is happening within the city's jurisdiction specifically. I have been participating with the Watershed Improvement Council. I do see a lot of opportunities to continue partnering with them as they look to continue in-stream monitoring. But the stormwater monitoring is a very specific, it's different. It's not just collecting a sample from the stream, it's collecting a sample from a pipe that's going into the stream. So it's a little bit of a different strategy, and therefore the city needs to undertake this because it's for compliance for our permit.
I think given the huge stormwater problems that we have and the fact that our stormwater system is our streets, we are going to have to find another source of funding, an additional source of funding to address the stormwater issues. It's not, our Streets and Open Space Fund isn't going to be able to be stretched that far, and the Aquifer Protection Fee is estimated to only raise about $250,000 a year.
Right. Councilwoman, if I could comment, your point is a point that was made in some of our previous presentations to the council, that when you look at the types of permits, the types of requirements, activities, projects, and so forth, you are absolutely correct. There is a hole in the city of Prescott's funding resources to address water quality. Unfortunately, to date, the stance of the Yavapai County Flood Control District has been that they work on a project-specific basis, a grant basis. We have brought up the subject of stormwater quality as well as stormwater quantity, i.e. flood control. And I think that there is some additional work that needs to be done with the Flood Control District and having a dialogue, because, let's face it, the regulatory agencies are talking about water quality, not water quantity, mostly these days. So you're right. We don't have that funding source. We don't have, unfortunately, the money in the general fund. If we had surplus in the general fund, we could use it for water quality. It would be a legitimate governmental purpose, but we don't have the money there. With respect to your specific comment on the funding of this particular contract, what I would suggest and recommend to the council is that you award the contract today, understanding that most of the work is going to be due in fiscal year 16, and during the remainder of the budget process that we're in now, that is before the adoption of the final budget, I'd like to bring back to you an analysis of the funding of this contract, which addresses some of the comments that have been made, and perhaps we might adjust it for next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie.
Mayor, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Craig, I think you answered my question. We are expecting a release from ADEQ, which has not come yet. but we're extending this contract, anticipating that release is going to be negative to the city. We have appealed the Watson Lake TMDL, and that is still in the works. My question was going to be, why are we doing this until we receive the TMDL from the state, so that we know what it says and what we might have to do?
Well, if you look at the scope of work, as was explained, there are 3 tasks. One is basically we have completed the initial contract regarding the Watson Lake TMDL. We are in the appeal phase, and so we need additional support of this particular technical contractor. Secondly, review of the final Upper Granite Creek watershed. We're talking about reviewing what ADEQ has come up with. They have not decided and issued it, but they have issued the draft, and we have a pretty darn good sense of what's coming down here. And I think we also have the example of what occurred on the Watson Lake TMDL, that regardless, it seems, of what comments and what scientific questions we raise, they are inclined to go ahead with what they're going to do anyhow. They did exactly that for Watson Lake, which necessitated our appeal. And then thirdly, with respect to a stormwater quality monitoring plan, that's, as has been explained, that's a permit requirement, an existing permit requirement, which is going to get nothing but more stringent. So, Mayor, I think that with 95, 98, 99, 100% certainty here, we're going to need all of this work done because it is coming down the line. It's just the way the world is working these days.
Comments from the public? Okay, motion?
Mayor, quick question, sorry, and follow up to Craig's statement. When does the existing contract expire, or it's nearing completion? When is it complete?
Right, Ben up here, look away.
Mayor and Council, the contract was actually supposed to have been completed about a year and a half ago. The reason why it's been delayed so long is because ADEQ delayed issuing the final draft TMDL for about two years. Well, it's been about a year. We thought that it would occur much sooner than what it did, but even though we have to respond within 35 days, they don't have a response period. So the contract that we currently have has a little less than $10,000 in it, and that's going to be used up very, very quickly. So in order to continue the appeal process, we need to extend it.
Okay. Thank you. AMEC does great work for the city, and I'm very appreciative of everything you guys do. My no vote coming on this has to do with some history and some disappointment in the fact that we're even at where we are at today. I think this could have been headed off 12 months ago. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Comments from the public? Do you have a motion?
Mayor, I move to award city contract number 2015-184 to AMEC Foster Wheeler for the Upper Granite Creek watershed and Watson Lake TMDL and stormwater quality monitoring plan in the amount not to exceed $117,500.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Fails 3-4. Mayor Kirkendall, Councilman Blair, Councilwoman Wilcox, and Councilman Arnold dissenting.
Okay, item K.
Item 3K, award of city contract number 2015-183 to SAC Construction LLC for a cured-in-place sewer pipe rehabilitation during a 2-year period to an on an as-need basis, utilizing pricing through the Cooperative Purchasing Network's TCPN, contract number R5143, in an amount not to exceed $1,500,000. This item was tabled from the May 12, 2015 meeting.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just a quick recap. This contract allows the city to rehabilitate immediate needs that we've identified within our sewer system, and those immediate needs are listed on page 2 of the council communication, and they were provided or illustrated on maps in the May 12th agenda packet. In addition to those immediate needs, this contract also allows the city to address future unknowns as they are identified. So it gives us the flexibility to take care of the needs we have right now, as well as needs that we identify as we continue to investigate our sewer system and the condition thereof. Following up on the past, the previous council agenda item, it also allows us to address water quality issues where we do have sewer mains that are in need of repair and potentially contaminating the environment. This type of project will allow us to shore those up. So as the clerk indicated, this item was tabled from the May 12th meeting, and there were some specific questions that were brought up. And I'm going to attempt to address those on the fly, and please interrupt me at any time if you need follow-up clarification. In addition, I also have a representative from SAK Construction here with us today to help answer any more specific questions that I cannot handle. So I'm going to walk through these now one at a time as far as I understood the questions from the last meeting. Council wanted a little bit more information on SAK Construction. I provided that in the council packet, but just a brief overview. SAK has been in business since 2006, with key personnel coming over from a company called In Situ Form. And some of those key personnel were with In Situ Form and have been in this business for about the last 15 years. As far as the location, there was questions about that at the last meeting. This project in the city of Prescott will be served from their Phoenix office, where they have key staff members that will handle our needs, including Mr. Brian Ackerman, who's with us today, who brings his specific knowledge of not only cured and pipe rehabilitation, but also municipal experience, as he has worked for Arizona municipality as well as a municipality in other states. As I mentioned, the Phoenix office will serve the city of Prescott, and that Phoenix office currently has a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts with City of Phoenix and Pima County, as well as other municipalities down in the valley, City of Las Vegas, Clark County. So they do this work, they're familiar with this work, and they have a good reputation doing this work. SAK Construction offers a 2-year bonded warranty as indicated in the council memo. That was also a specific concern at our last meeting. This warranty is consistent with what the city gets on other projects. If we put in a pipe today, it's going to have a 2-year warranty, just the same as this rehabilitation work has a warranty. So really no difference and quite consistent, actually. In follow-up to that, the city will inspect these lines prior to the warranty expiring to make sure that they are performing as we would expect them without any failures. And if there are any failures observed, we would call up SAK Construction for some follow-up work and warranty repair work. As I mentioned, that's a bonded warranty, so we have some assurances that they will perform. Another question that came up was about TCPN. I want to be very clear that the city's contract will not be with TCPN. TCPN is the Cooperative Purchasing Network. TCPN essentially solicits these services nationwide and generates a response and ultimately gets bid prices that incorporate a volume discount, in that the vendors know that there will be multiple agencies calling on them on this contract to perform the work, so they are not guaranteed work, but they are expecting a large volume of work coming their way. I wanted to clear up a few other things as far as what the city's options are. The city does not need to do a rehabilitation contract. There are other options. We can open cut the roads or the washes and install pipes. We can do that. That would require us to design, where we'd come to council for a contract. We'd bid them out. We would construct them. That has some concerns. It's not as efficient. It's going to cost about twice as much. I'm going to throw out a ballpark number, 2 times as much to do open cut as it is to do pipeline rehabilitation. It also requires more staff time to manage that construction project. Also has additional impacts on the residents, the citizens, by obviously open cutting streets as opposed to the rehabilitation that we're talking about here today. As I indicated earlier, this contract has a lot of efficiencies. One of them is, as we go along and we identify areas that need rehabilitation, we can address them through this contract. There's no need to pause, to design, to bid, to construct. That process is eliminated. We can simply go straight to a rehabilitation and take advantage of the efficiencies that this type of procurement offers us. I hope I answered the questions from last meeting, and I'm sure there's some more, so at this point I'd like to entertain anything that you may have.
Charlie, we'll start with you.
Mayor, thank you, and Joel, I'm sorry I wasn't at the last meeting. Got tidbits of it, though. Sure. Some of the questions that came up, and I've had a chance to look at SAK's license, and I'm happy with them and their existence, and that's great. Included in the agenda package was the TCPN notice to respondent, which is a 50-page blank document with 2 pages of information. And when I say blank, I mean none of the information filled in. So that leads me to look at and say, okay, here's our pricing that we can expect as the city. But within the TCPN information, it talks about the warranty, the scope of work, which is all in contradiction to the staff report. And so I think what we're missing is the actual contract with SAK, number one. Number two, we have a department within the city that regularly uses a CCTV truck and other equipment to TV and clean our lines. In this contract, the cost to clean and TV 6-inch to 12-inch sewer line is $5.50 a linear foot. And the post-inspection after rehabilitation is $2.50 a foot. My understanding is in the upcoming budget, the city's discussing adding another camera truck, which is 2 employees plus everything that goes along with employees plus equipment. And just based upon a quick estimate of the $400,000 projected project expense that's here, we would spend somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 on cleaning and the 2 TV operations. And in my opinion, that's $100,000 that could go towards employing 2 people and buying a truck. And we're talking about $1.5 million. If we utilize that entire scope or entire amount of money, we'd be potentially spending $300,000 to have someone else do something that I feel we might be capable of doing. I understand that there's standards that need to be adhered to. They need to know where the laterals are so that they can properly cut those in. But my understanding, having witnessed what we do, visiting that truck in the field, we follow a very standard practice. We can hand a CD or a thumb drive to somebody and say, here's the line with all the measurements in it. So I have some heartburn about that. I will tell you, from my opinion, cast in place is the right approach for the city to take on a lot of these types of things. I just am concerned about giving carte blanche $1.5 million approval over 2 years as we determine to use it. Those are some challenges that I'm facing. $100,000 in a tight budget, going to pay somebody to do something that we already do and that we need to do more of, is a challenge, and I would be more inclined to limiting the not to exceed amount so that this can come back again in a future year's contract. And I would be very interested in discussing limiting the amount of the contractor we use for services that the city already provides. Let me ease your concerns in regards to CCTV and cleaning. as I mentioned earlier, this is a flexible contract. Essentially, the prices listed are like a menu. If the city wants to perform the cleaning, we'll do it ourselves. We have the staff to do it, we will do it. If the city would like to do the TV, we can do that ourselves. We don't need to contract it out and use our vendor for it. We have the option to if our resources are limited, but we have the ability to do it. Very similar to bypass pumping, which wasn't something that was brought up. Bypass pumping is something we can pay for through this contract. It's also something we have the equipment and tools to do in-house. It is not staff's intention to set SAK free and say, go do this project. This is a cooperation, a collaboration, where we sit down with SAK and say, here's our project. We've done the video. This is what it looks like. We'll do the cleaning. Here's the bid prices. The bid prices that we know. And those bid prices are maximum bid prices. We will get a volume discount if we do a greater economy of scale, if we do a greater project. So once again, it's flexible, and we will use staff to do as much work as we can as possible. In regards to, and I hope that answers your question, and I can see where your heartburn comes from, but please understand that it is not our intention to use this contract for services we can provide in-house and provide efficiently in-house. Your first comment had to do with the contract that was provided. It's not a contract, it's a solicitation. There was questions at the last council meeting about that solicitation. What does TCPN do? So the purpose of providing the solicitation was to demonstrate to council what TCPN does, how they bid it out nationwide, and how different agencies can utilize this to get greater efficiency, greater volume pricing. You're absolutely correct. The solicitation I provided you does talk about a 1-year warranty. City had heartburn with that. City staff did. We said, our standard's 2 years. I'll say that's quite odd. Most municipalities are 1 year. Some are 6 months. We went to SAK and said, we need 2 years. And they said, that's fine. We'll honor that. And so they have provided a letter essentially saying, 2-year warranty, they'll honor it. So I understand it is contradictory, but I wanted to provide the background information that got us to this point, but to follow up and say, you know what, we wanted more, we asked for more, and once again, it's a collaboration. They're willing to work with us on this.
And certainly, this isn't a contract. It's kind of a sample agreement, but we can always go back to them. It says, even in this first paragraph, that we as the respondent can include in writing any required exceptions or deviations from the terms, and basically what we would do is use our standard boilerplate contract and then negotiate down from that point.
So I guess my question is, what is the city actually signing with the contractor to say this is what you're going to do? Or this is what the scope of your services are? This will be run very much like a job order contracting. It's also known as work order contracting, which is an approved procurement method in Arizona revised statutes. The city will sit down with a contractor and say, we've got this segment of pipe, and we videoed it. Let's sit down and look at the video together. And based on that video, we will jointly develop a scope of work. So many lineal feet, certain diameter, so many services. What will the city do? Yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and inspect it. We're going to clean it. What will the contractor do? We clarify each other's obligations or commitments. And they say, okay, to do that project, it's going to cost X dollars. We can certainly negotiate that dollar. If we don't think it's fair, we don't have to engage business with them. We don't have to spend one dime of this. We know we have the needs. We do anticipate using this money, and we anticipate getting a fair and competitive price, not only because it's been already competitively bid, but because we have bids from other municipalities. We know what this work costs. They are very much interested in keeping our business. They want to perform for us. They want to earn our next job order. They want to continue doing work for the city. So there's a interest on their part to perform for us and give us customer satisfaction.
Steve.
You said bonded warranty for 2 years. What is the bond on that warranty?
Brian, can you help me out here,
There needs
please?
to be, I'd like to know the dollar amount, because that is my trigger, that based upon whatever we do, it's warranted, it's bonded, and that we have, I've seen the process before. I enjoyed watching the process. Actually, it was very interesting. And I appreciate the fact that we're able to use that process without cutting up roads. So I'm just interested in the bond.
The bond amount changes from municipality to municipality. They range anywhere from, could be $50,000 to $100,000, could be 1.5% of the contract amount. Currently we have a $30 million job order contract with City of Phoenix. That's a 5-year contract, and we're doing 1.5% on that right now currently.
So that's another item that we'd have to figure out along the way when you're, I guess, in negotiations based upon how often we use them. And I would suspect that it would probably be better to do a percentage bond than it would be to buy the job, because we may have a lot of jobs.
What we would probably actually do, and what we do for City of Phoenix, so we'd bond the whole contract amount whether it got used or not. After the contract has been completed, the term has run its course, we get a refund from the bonding company on dollars actually spent against the contract.
I like that. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify,
it makes it easy.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, is that it would be a blanket contract. All job orders are, with Phoenix, we're issued a job order for $1 million. And we negotiate job orders on an individual basis, on a price basis. The TCPN is just a mechanism to consolidate purchasing power to help streamline the purchasing process, vet people ahead of time, the best they can. But those are not to exceed pricings and are geared more towards a starting point. You can pick and choose anything you want. So if we get a job order to reline 5,000 feet, the city can say, we want to use internal staff for this, and that's fine, or we need you for that, we can supplement. It's really flexible on what it can be used, but that's a not to exceed pricing. So when you see higher pricing, you remember that we're bidding a quantity of 1 to TCPN. So it may be $5 for clean and video TCPN. That number may be $1.65. So I just want to make staff and council aware of that as well.
Okay. Jane?
Well, I'd sure like to see the contract. This work is a little bit different than your typical professional services or engineering construction contract. It seems to be structured differently, and I would think if the city is choosing to do some of this work itself, you mentioned bypass or TV work, I'd like to know how that affects the warranty, and surely that should be addressed in the contract.
Our warranty, we're the last person to leave the pipeline, so the work that's done by staff ahead of time, once we line, our warranty is for the final product that is in place. So it would have no impact on the warranty of what staff did prior or if video afterwards. We do our own clean and video as part of our unit price prior to installing the liner, and then another video after the liner has been installed, cured, and laterals reinstated for a post for record that's submitted to the city. So staff involvement as whatever it may be on the cleaning side, the bypass side, would have no impact on our warranty, limiting on the 2-year bonded warranty on our side for what we do.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem to me, if I may, that we have these dollar amounts to spend, and based upon the city being able to do the camera as well as the final, it would seem that our dollars would stretch a lot further than paying this company to do it. So therefore, I see more bang for our buck. So I'm happy with the way it is.
Anyone else? Joel, my comments pretty much follow Charlie's. We've had a lack of information on this 2 weeks ago, and with just this information here, we still have a lack of information as far as I'm concerned. My responsibility here is to sign the contracts. And I don't remember ever receiving a contract that needed to be signed that didn't have any information on it. It would appear the only thing here that indicates is going to be a contract is a vendor agreement between Cooperative Purchasing Network and blank. And I'm assuming that's the agreement between Cooperative Purchasing Network and your company. And I don't know what party we are to that agreement.
Okay.
The contract that when it's ready to be signed that I want to sign spells out all the detail of the relationship that the city of Prescott has with your company.
Mayor, Council, and let me clear up, because I think there's some confusion on what TCPN is and what their role is, and how they play in the contracts. TCPN has pooled together that gives it a lawful way for you to use SAK to do this work directly. That's what it is. The contract will be entered into your standard contract, City of Town of Prescott to SAK. TCPN does not have any contractual obligations or input from that point. What TCPN basically says is they have followed procurement laws for these vendors to be able to be direct selected and used at will, with not having to go through a rigorous bidding process or procurement process or design process. But TCPN has no, your contract will be through us. So it would be a standard, whatever your standard contract is, and it would go through the channels like that. We'd get the contract, we would review it. If we had any questions, we'd bring up questions. But I mean, we do a lot of city work, municipal work all over the country. So we usually don't. So it's not, you're not entering into a contract with TCPN. So it'd be Town of Prescott entering into a contract with SAK for a dollar amount not to exceed, not guaranteed, used at staff's will or council, mayor, and on projects that deem to be needed. And then on that, we're taken into individual job orders as they're issued. That way, you're not guaranteeing SAK $1 million. We may do $5,000.
Yeah, I think we understand that, but let me follow up a bit. We're going to issue a purchase order for up to $1.5 million. What keeps the council in the loop at all of how much of that money has been spent at any given time? Are we just to assume that here it is, take it and run with it? It's unusual. We don't do business that way. On a $20,000 contract, we'll have 10 pages of specifications.
Mayor, I would
nothing on this.
Yeah, Mayor, I think that I think your point is well taken, and certainly the discussion here has. I look at it as progressed. Okay, we had the initial presentation. There were a lot of questions asked. We've addressed a lot of those questions today, but the council still has questions about job order contracting, about how it works, and Mayor, you specifically, because you're the individual who signs the contract. We do have standard city contracts, construction contracts that we're all used to. We have not done or rarely done job order contracting. We have done some in the past, but they're very rare and they're very small. So my suggestion would be to continue the progression and to prepare the contract and put the actual contract document on the agenda so you know what it looks like and how it works. Now, if there is some interest in, well, let's take it a little bit easier here. You know, we're asking for a lot. We haven't used this type of contract for anything on the scale of $1.5 million. Well, we do have a list of projects which add up to about $400,000. So if the council is more comfortable with that, then what we could do is issue an initial contract which is not to exceed $500,000, for example, and then we will come back to you and we'll have another discussion about what the progress was and how it worked out and all that kind of stuff. And I think that perhaps that will progress us even further. So at some point we're all familiar and we're all comfortable with this particular approach. Now, there's one last piece of this, is how does the council really get in, and this is your last comment or question, how does the council really stay up to speed on what the progress of this thing is? And so, we can do some thinking about that, whether that's a quarterly report or something like that. We can certainly do that too. But I think that certainly the approach is a solid approach. It's being done a lot of places elsewhere. It's much more efficient. It's much more effective. It is a job order-based contract with unit prices. If you don't, or if you do things in-house, then you don't pay the contractor to do them. You don't pay them to do them twice. You don't pay them a higher amount if you can do them cheaper. But these are all the things that we're not familiar to seeing and talking about here. So I think that we can...
well, I think that's a good solution. What adds a little more confusion is there has been conversation that the reason they wanted to use their people to do the cameraing and mapping and locating where the laterals are was because that had some effect on the quality of their work, where if they took our word for it, it might not have the same warranty type. So I think we just need on the, as long as we're only the bridesmaid, let's take the first one a little different, and if we can grow to the next phase, why we can do that.
And Mayor, if council's more comfortable, you can take no action today, and we'll bring back the construction contract so we all know how it works.
Okay, sounds good. Charlie, you have?
That was just my comment, is if we can see a contract and how it works, then we can move it forward.
I'll guarantee you, I will not sign nothing.
Hear it?
Okay. Comments from the public? Do you have a motion?
No, I don't think well, okay.
We're going to bring it back.
Yeah, you don't need to
bring it back.
We'll bring it back.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, let's go to item L.
Item 3L, determination of the order of listing the city measures on the August 25, 2015 primary election ballot.
Mayor and Council, a question was raised regarding the order in which the 4 city measures for the August 25th primary will be listed on the ballot. City clerk has made some inquiries with the Yavapai County elections, and one question was raised: is there a possibility, like candidates, that the order of those candidates could be rotated on the various batches of ballots that are printed? So the city clerk can address that question.
I spoke with the elections director from Yavapai County Elections, and she said, although you can rotate candidate names, the ballot measures, because of the way the program's set up, you can't rotate a block of ballots with this measure first and this measure first. So that really wasn't an option for us.
It's not?
It is not,
okay.
No.
So with that, that being the case, we provided a recommendation of the order of the questions, but that is the council's prerogative. So we thought it'd be good for the council to discuss it and settle it so it can go on the ballot.
Well, what I've been concerned about is that if we sit here and try to strategize what the best order will be, we'll get crucified for that. And if we don't talk about it, we'll probably get crucified for that we had something already figured out ahead of time. So I'll certainly, let's listen to the discussion. And I probably would vote for drawing straws or something of that nature, because I don't think we want to get in a position of anybody saying we had a motive other than what the paperwork reflects. Dan?
Yeah, can I speak?
Sure.
I was looking over this. My name is Daniel Matson. I live over on Merritt. I would like to say let's put the general plan first, because that's a very easy one for people to just say, yeah, it costs me nothing. And then the other ones, in progression from the one that's the most, the biggest increase on down, I think that's just fine. But I don't, if people go, oh, this tax increase, that tax increase, they're liable to start getting a little miffed, and then they get down to the general plan and they're like, heck no. I'd rather see the general plan first, and then
Well, are
I think the others are fine.
you trying to determine some strategy?
I am. Unabashedly. I'm not ashamed to say it, but I think we should go general plan ratification, PSPRS, it's a 0.55%. Streets and sales tax, it's actually a 0.25 increase. And then the open space tax, it's a 0.08. I think it'll be more palatable to people to go through the taxes in the descending order of increase. If they're going to say no to one, they're going to say no to all of them. If they say yes to that, well, why not a little bit more and a little bit more for a good cause? What the heck? But I'm worried that some people might say, oh, they want more taxes and then get down to the general plan and be in a bad mood. So I'd put the general plan first and then the taxes. So just put number 4 ahead of number 1.
Second.
Sounds good? No.
Jane?
I think on a statewide issue, the propositions are put on in the order in which they are numbered, which is determined by the order in which they become certified by the Secretary of State for the ballot. And that seems to me to be the only fair way to do this. Take the first issue that was referred by the council, put that on the ballot first. I think that was the general plan, if I'm not mistaken. The second was the streets. The third was PSPRS. And the last one was the open space.
I can live with that.
I can live with that. I'm good with that.
I just don't care.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It makes no difference.
That makes sense, and I'm okay with that one.
I move to take Gene's recommendations.
You like that one?
I second it twice.
You win one, Gene.
Hey, got one. Oh, we have to vote.
I'm going to be voting no on this.
We haven't voted yet.
Wait, what's your motion, Gene? See if I can get a second on that. Thanks.
Steve?
I seconded that one, and then I seconded this one.
I don't think there's a motion. I think there was some discussion. If Councilwoman Wilcox wants to make a motion and it gets a second, and then if there's additional discussion, you can have it at that point. That'll be great.
Okay. I move to approve the listing of the 2015 primary election ballot measures in the following order, which is the same order that the council took action to refer these items to the voters. Question 1 would be the general plan ratification. Question 2 would be the street sales tax. Question 3 would be the PSPRS sales tax. And question 4 would be the open space sales tax.
Second and amen.
You want to vote?
Still have to vote on it. Hold on. Go. Forget to vote on it.
Passes unanimously.
Gene, you got a unanimous.
Maybe a first.
Bang that gavel.
We're adjourned.